Chapter 21, Just how high do you even have to be? An alien noise woke Sloane. Garbled, impenetrable. Her eyes adjusted to the dim interior lighting of a room with ambiguous purpose as her various sensory receptors rebooted at about the speed of a 15-year-old computer. Something warm sagged against her shoulder. Ignoring the ache in her skull, Sloane turned toward it and found sleeping there a topless female no older than Sloane herself with what looked like a dog collar around her neck. Sloane leapt with a start, lost her balance, floundered back onto the couch, and leapt again. Lacking support, the topless girl slumped against the cushion with a snore. What the fuck had Delaney gotten her into this time? Sloane patted her coat to make sure she hadn't been, molested or something in her sleep. All the buttons on her jacket were in place, and all her thick layers beneath it untampered. Her soul gem remained in the appropriate pocket, next to her, empty, wallet and her passport with the awful picture. Nothing out of place. How did I get here, she asked herself. Where was here? What happened the night before? Had she been drinking? The room had one door. Sloane moved for it, only to trip over a second girl, marginally more clothed than the first. A quick glance around the room revealed 3 more girls all in similar states of repose. What was this place? Had Delaney lost her powers? They had fought. Claire was there. But how did that lead to Sloane getting here? Watching not to step on any more girls, Sloane tiptoed her way toward the door. The alien noise that roused her continued, still incoherent despite Sloane's mostly regained mental faculties. She tried the door carefully, hiding behind the frame as she surveyed the dark room beyond, its windows shuttered. Silver outlines from the scant grey light illuminated an entire pile of girls in various states of undress, heaped on sofas, tables, chairs, overturned shelves. A modest chandelier hung uneven from the center, its bulbs flickering. The den smelled of alcohol and ash and things Sloane had never smelled before. Foul, sickly smelling things. In the darkness, 2 cat-like eyes gleamed at her. Sloane froze in the doorway as she attempted to place the eyes to a person, but all around was only darkness and silhouette. The chandelier flickered to reveal a girl, a fully clothed one, at that, seated upon a recliner with her legs crossed. Sloane blinked. She had seen this girl before, but the memory was faint and distant. Not Delaney, not Bloomington or Woodbury, not St. Paul or the Terminatrix, not Claire. It came to her. You're Claire's sister. Even in the olden days, when Sloane and Claire were best of buds, Sloane had only seen Claire's older sister a handful of times, and mostly in glimpses as she dashed like Sasquatch between hallways of the Ibsen household. Claire and Claire's parents did not mention her much, and when they did not mention her fondly. Yeah, I guess that's what they usually call me, said Claire's sister. I prefer Lynette. Lynette, said Sloane. It might be her name, it might not. Sloane could not remember. So you brought me here? Nah, I just came for the free booze, said Lynette. She lifted a hand that clenched a tall bottle of vodka. The dregs sloshed inside. You come with a date? I asked because I don't know. Ah. Lynette uncorked the bottle and took a swig, which she punctuated with a raspy smack of her lips. That's how you know it's a good night, am I right or am I right? What the hell was happening, Sloane thought. Why Claire's sister, of all people? She was not a magical girl. Unless she kept it a secret from Claire and Sloane and all the other Minneapolis girls for years. She was too old for Cubay's contract range. Doubtless the legions of hungover girls strewn about this house, apartment, were not magical girls either. Which meant, what relation did they have to anything? A random nomad skirting the fringes of the city had more bearing on the war between Sloane and Claire than Claire's sister. A magical girl and a non-magical one inhabited separate spheres of existence. You know, said Lynette, after Sloane did not respond, I thought you were missing? There was a hoopla about that. Missing posters, police, and shit. Your family showed up on TV. Or wait, are you the other twin? Shit, I dunno. I'm the other twin, said Sloane. To cause less problems. She had forgotten her family still assumedly lived in this city, and that they might have some vague interest in finding her and bringing her home. Better to leave as few tracks as possible. Lynette downed the last of her vodka and dropped the bottle over the side of the recliner. Prep school girls, she said. Prim and proper by day, crazy bitches by night. My sister is the sole exception in the history of prep school. All this was nice and all, but entirely unhelpful. Still, the encounter made Sloane wary. All signs indicated Claire and her sister had a non-existent relationship. Would Claire use her sister as an ally against Sloane? Keeping an eye on Lynette, who reached down and began stroking the hair of a sleeping girl, Sloane made her way across the room, careful to avoid wayward limbs and splayed fingers. More doors branched from the room, from one of which came the omnipresent sounds that had woken her. Sloane went through the door into a bedroom. Atop the grandiose profusion of satin bedding and heaped mattresses sat two people. One was a black man in a beret, the other an Asian chick wrapped in a blanket. They held game controllers and gazed into a television screen mounted to the wall, where each manipulated a gun-toting space marine through a lush and alien jungle. Her tenebrous memories recalled both of these people. Something about a pink Cadillac. It made Sloane's head ache. One of the space marines on the television died in an explosion while a gruff announcer said Kilimanjaro. The other space marine leapt onto the corpse of the first and furiously crouched up and down. "Sheet," said the black man in the beret. He tossed his controller aside. "You damn good at this." "Being good at things is what I do," said Blanket Girl. "Another round." "Now way. I just lose. I'll handicap myself. Pistols only. You use whatever you like." "If only you was as good at dodging bullets in real life as you was in this game," said Beret Man. "Ha. Funny." Beret Man's comment made Sloane remember. The alleyway. Claire and the other girl, what was her name? Hennepin, that's right. Then the Cadillac came and... "What the fuck is happening?" said Sloane. Hennepin and the black guy wheeled toward her. They gaped until Hennepin recomposed herself and said, "Hey, what you know? It's Fargo." Sloane kept her hand in her pocket, wrapped around her soul gem. Hennepin was one of Claire's goons. She seemed docile, but that was no reason to let one's guard down. "You wake up with your clothes on," said Hennepin. "Lucky, I still can't find mine." She indicated the blanket around her bare shoulders and sighed. Beret Man held up a knowing finger. "That what the boss say? She say, make sure that girl have no clothes. I ask why, she say just do it. I say okay, and I don't ask no more questions." "Oh, gross," said Hennepin. "Can you believe it, Fargo? I got undressed in my sleep by this skeevy pervert. I didn't touch nothing." "Yeah, that's easy to believe." Hennepin rolled her eyes. "I want to know who brought me here and why," said Sloane. "And where I am and a whole slew of other shit. And I don't feel like wasting time waiting for answers." "Isn't it obvious?" said Hennepin. She grabbed her controller and set some options on a menu screen. "At least, obvious who brought us here. Come on, Fargo, I know you're smarter than that. Actually, I don't know jack about how smart you are, but I assume you at least got a cerebrum more developed than single-cell protozoa." Sloane watched as Hennepin and the Beret Man queued up for another round. Hennepin took an early lead when she set up an ambush and dispatched Mr. Beret with a clean headshot. "Tell me who brought me here." Hennepin sighed as she set up camp outside Mr. Beret's spawn point and racked up kills on regular 5-second intervals, ignoring the indignant protests of her adversary. "Fargo. Please, you're making me lose my faith in humanity. Think about it. Who loves lascivious orgies, illegal substances of many colors and flavors, and glitzy pink cars? It's not a long list." Sloane was absolutely certain she knew nobody who would fit such a description. Unless Delaney? They seemed like things Delaney might like. But Delaney was not an option, she had stayed behind to buy time while Sloane fled Claire's lackeys. The list of people she knew in general was rather short: Delaney, Omaha, Claire, Woodbury, Bloomington, St. Paul. The Terminatrix. Quebec, if he counted as a person. Winnipeg. Except she was dead. "Tell me who brought me here," said Sloane. "Oh dear. You must be an amnesiac." Hennepin sniped Mr. Beret from across the map with a pistol to end the round. "Luckily, that grants you plot immunity to any and all danger, at least until a critical event jogs your memory and you recall your past as one of the following: A. An extraterrestrial with a powerful message for Earth. B. The princess of a magic kingdom." Sloane ripped the controller from Hennepin's hands, forced her onto the bed, and coiled the cord around her neck. She pulled hard, constricting the cord and causing Hennepin to gasp for breath, her well-manicured fingers groping to loosen the knot. "If you think I am fucking around, You are dead fucking wrong, said Sloane. Aw come now, said Mr. Beret, although he made no attempt to restrain Sloane, that ain't nice. Let's try again, who brought me here? Sloane pulled tighter. Hennepin's eyes boggled. How uncouth, spoke a voice from behind. Sloane, why such barbarism? Sloane looked up. In the doorway stood a Dalmatian fur coat that may have kept a person inside it. Hands like dolls held both sides of the doorframe as the fur coat leaned into the room, a small round head observing the fracas within from behind soul-swallowing sunglasses and a pale layer of powdered makeup. Her hair, obviously dyed platinum blonde, streamed down her neck and collided with the trim of her coat until it became unclear where hair ended and coat began. Sapphires dangled from her ears and a diamond necklace hung low down the billowing expanse of skinned animal that comprised her torso. Jewels of various colors twinkled from folds and flaps in the coat. Tattooed on her neck in cursive was the word J adore. For some unknowable reason, Sloane found this creature both attractive and immediately soothing to be around. She loosened her grip on Hennepin's throat and rubbed her jaw in embarrassment. Oh. Hey. Sorry, she said. Don't be so gauche, the fur coat spoke. Its accent was British, except obviously fake. And yet somehow endearing? This made no sense. The coat person contained so many characteristics Sloane found tacky and debutante, and yet something made Sloane incapable of passing judgment. I understand you survived as a hermit in the wilderness for the past 7 months, but really, asphyxiation? That is the most depraved of all fetishes. What? Sloane glanced down and realized Hennepin's blanket had fallen away and revealed her bare upper body. And that Sloane was in a rather personal position on top of her. She quickly drew away, allowing the blushing Hennepin to pull her blanket up. Such and such statistic of people die each year from erotic asphyxiation, the fur coat continued, adjusting her oversized sunglasses. A real tragedy. I know she is a rather scrumptious sexual prospect, but please refrain from fornicating on my bed, I hate having to change the sheets every night. I change the sheets, though, said Mr. Beret. I hate having to order Carmichael to change the sheets every night, the fur coat amended. Funny joke, boss, said Mr. Beret. Or Carmichael, Sloane guessed. The fur coat glided into the room with her arms outstretched as though surfing. She made a dainty pirouette and landed on her side across the bed, sending reverberations of blankets downstream. So Sloane, I see you've awakened. No, let me try again. Sloane, haven't you missed me? I'm your best and closest friend ever. Sloane still had no idea who this girl was. Unless Delaney had swallowed a full bottle of drugs and pulled a prank on her. But this seemed somehow beyond even Delaney, and probably a fraction as useful. Like trading out a genuine article for a Chinese knockoff. For some reason Sloane did not want to offend this girl, and for some reason she did feel like they were friends. She rubbed her skull. Something was wrong about this. What? What's your name again? Oh no. She hit her head and developed amnesia. Whatever shall we do, Carmichael? Take her to a doctor, Carmichael offered. Feed her a Madeleine, said Hennepin, who kept her arms wrapped tight around herself. I love Madeleines, said the fur coat. She rolled off the bed with all her tails and sleeves flapping behind her. I'm certain I have some in the pantry. I'll be right back. Before Hennepin could say she was joking, the fur coat disappeared. Sloane nudged Hennepin. Really, who is she? Fuck you, said Hennepin. Find out yourself. Some form of magic must be causing the disjoint between Sloane's rational assessment of the fur coat and the subtle emotional attachment she had to it. For some reason she wanted to please the girl, or at least not disappoint her. She plumbed her memory for some girl with similar characteristics or at least a similar appearance. Since the other Minneapolis girls had all revealed themselves, it had to be either Anoka or Ramsey. But the Anoka when Sloane ruled was already on the way out, symptoms of cyclical death undeniable, and Ramsey, from Sloane's scant recollections, was a meek and quiet girl. Kind of like Omaha. She kept to herself and Sloane rarely had cause to call on her. Despite their few encounters, Sloane had always kept a positive impression of the girl, but she had assumed that was precisely because of their few encounters. The more Sloane had to see a girl, the more she disliked her. Except Claire. With Claire, only when Sloane stopped seeing her did the hatred fester. The fur coat sashayed back into the room. No Madeleines, sorry. Only a few eclairs. Are you Ramsay? Sloane asked. Ramsay unleashed a high-pitched squeal that lasted too long. Yes, yes. That's me. Ramsay. You remembered. I get scared sometimes people will forget. Fear not, darling, said Hennepin. You are Trace Unforgettable. The true meaning of Hennepin's words seemingly lost on her, Ramsay flopped onto the bed and kicked her legs in the air. My friends, my friends. It makes me so happy to hear these things. I am loved, I am truly loved. Every other sentence she had to shout. Her voice, somewhere deep in the throes of puberty, reached incisive highs that forced all around her to flinch. Good thing some kind of strange influence compelled Sloane to like this bizarre girl, or else she might rapidly lose patience. A good thing because with Delaney gone, Sloane needed allies and could not afford to alienate even this one. Thanks for helping me in the alley, said Sloane. Ramsay extended a gracious arm and dragged a finger down the side of Sloane's coat. You're welcome. It took me so long to even hear you were in Minneapolis. I was afraid I wouldn't reach you in time. But I did, and now a beautiful friendship can blossom. Yeah, said Sloane. You seem a lot different than last time. She had to stand up, because Ramsay began rolling back and forth on the bed, sending her flapping coat everywhere. She finally stopped the pointless interlude with a sheepish smile on her face. That's because... Dramatic pause. I started selling cocaine. Started? Selling? What? Sloane rubbed her eyes and pieced together Ramsay's words. The full awareness of their meaning came slow, staggered, and with a sagging weight in her chest. This was going to be her new ally, she realized. Her new Delaney. Oh boy. Sloane always had the best allies. So you sell to those girls outside? Said Sloane. No, oh no, said Ramsay. I mean, sometimes. But those girls are my employees. Employees? There were at least 30 girls in those rooms. Yeah. Ramsay sat up and affected the most businesslike posture one with such gaudy apparel could affect. It's a brilliant distribution model, actually. When cops prowl for drug dealers, who do they look at? Why, scuzzy black men like Carmichael, that's who. I deliberately play against their preconceived stereotypes by hiring only young girls to flip for me. Not one has been caught yet, and I'm months in the trade. Brilliant, totally brilliant. The throb in Sloane's head deepened. Her disgust at Ramsay's practices battled with her incomprehensible like for Ramsay as a person. Overall it left her feeling ill. Come on Slow Dizzle, don't be like that. Ramsay grabbed Sloane's shoulders and gave a vigorous shake. I swear it's not as bad as you think. Oh no, said Hennepin. Here comes the sob story. Ramsay glared at her. Silence. I know for you, Sloane, who had the fortune of living with her parents and having a roof over your head and food to eat every night, the concept of needing to make money may be foreign, but... I worked a convenience store in Fargo, said Sloane. Yes, but you're 17. It's not even legal for someone my age to work in this idiotic country, okay? Ramsay shrieked in frustration and pounded her fists against the bed. This always happens. Nobody understands and they think I'm some kind of freak. You're just as bad as Claire. Oh no. Come on Sloane, be nice. Who gives a shit about cocaine, you need a friend. She placed a limp hand on Ramsay's shoulder. You're right, I'm sorry. Please, go on. Although Hennepin scoffed, Ramsay was instantly mollified. She rose to her knees and rocked back and forth. Thanks. Anyway, what I was saying is, 14-year-old me wound up in this city with no money and no nothing. I had to live somewhere, but nobody will hire an underage girl with no technical skills. So I resorted to what most magical girls have to do. Cocaine, said Sloane. Prostitution, said Ramsay, like a punch to Sloane's gut. We may have no skills, but we still have our nubile teenage bodies, which will always be worth something to someone. That was legitimately horrible. It made Sloane cringe, and she fancied herself above such squeamishness. She remembered the pimp in Fargo and the peacock ladies in Williston. She thought about Winnipeg, whose accent had outed her as an immigrant. She thought about Delaney, and her heart-shaped wallet that never went empty. Where did that money come from? Wow, said Sloane. That was what you were doing when I was in charge of Minneapolis. She thought about the meek Ramsay she remembered from before. Quiet, head low. Said little. Jesus Christ. Not just me, said Ramsay. The old Hennepin, and the old Woodbury too. We tried to help each other out, give support and such. Claire knew, and she wanted us to find another way, but she was remarkably unhelpful about suggesting an alternative. After that whole snafu between you and her, and she took over for real, things got tense. I doubt she liked having teen whores running around her city. She just doesn't like any gainfully employed female, said Hennepin. She's a reactionary. To her, women live as pretty domestics and play music all day. Ramsay rolled over on the bed and tangled with the covers. Anyway, this conversation bores me. You can figure out what happens next. All seedy industries are acquainted with one another, the leap from hooker to hawker was rather simple. Especially since people tend to like me, at least ever since I contracted. Had to change my personality a tad, whimpering pushovers don't make profits. The concept of identity is so overrated. We're all cookie-cut slabs of meat and bone who only think we're different. Except in measures of strength, skill, intelligence, speed. Hennepin listed the qualities on her fingers. Some of us got dark skin too, said Carmichael. This conversation had quickly careened off the tracks. In Sloane's estimation, none of these people knew what the hell they were saying, and Ramsay's flippant demeanor quickly overruled any sympathy points her dismal past may have garnered. Sloane remembered she had a mission to accomplish. So you're siding with me over Claire because Claire doesn't like you pushing cocaine across the city, is that it? Said Sloane. And you think if I'm in charge, I won't care? Ramsay covered a forced laugh. I know you won't care. I've seen you run this city. Laissez-faire at its finest. Sloane would have been annoyed if it weren't totally true. Okay, she said. Then let's talk Claire Ibsen. How do we? With a nonchalant gesture Ramsay interrupted her. Yes, we'll get to that. Why the rush? We've only been reunited after so long apart. And with Hennepin we have ourselves a real party. Calm down, relax. She stretched back on the bed and yawned. It's too early to talk war. We'll worry about it tonight. I have a Terminatrix on my ass, Ramsay, said Sloane. To Ramsay, this fact seemed only mildly disconcerting. Considering how loosely she mentioned magical girl stuff around Carmichael and an earshot of at least 30 normals outside, the concept of Terminatrixes probably did not register too strongly with her. Surprising Kyubey hadn't condemned Ramsay by now, actually. Did using her powers, because surely she had a power that altered how others perceived her, that was the only explanation for why Sloane liked her so much, to sell drugs throughout the city count as inflicting harm upon regular humans with magic? A rather thin line. Sloane waited for Ramsay to say something, but apparently a total lack of response was all the Terminatrix remark merited. Can I have my clothes back? Said Hennepin. Ramsay shot up. Are you daft? Of course not. That's part of your torture. Torture, said Sloane and Hennepin in unison. Duh. Ramsay pushed herself off the bed, reinvigorated by the concept. You're my captive, right? Which means I'm morally obligated to torture you, it's just how it works, don't question it. She laid her hands on Hennepin's shoulders. But hurting people makes me sad, it's so barbaric. I'd rather torture you, what's the word? Psychologically. Shamefully? Torture you through shame, yes. Hence the lack of clothes. Hennepin looked to Sloane as if to confirm the words she heard were the same words everyone else heard. Sloane was as baffled as she was, and Carmichael had seemed to drift into his own fantasy realm, gazing only into the post-television screen and nodding to the points of emphasis in Ramsay's speech patterns. Well, you win, said Hennepin. I'm embarrassed. We done yet? For a moment Ramsay stared at the blankets swaddling Hennepin's body, stroking her chin and murmuring to herself. She pulled down her sunglasses for a better look. Well, maybe. I guess so. Carmichael, where did you put her clothes? Carmichael quickly scanned the ground as if maybe he dropped them there. I forget. An epiphany overtook Ramsay and she held up a finger. Oh, that's right. I told you to scatter her articles of clothing around the house. We were going to make her search for them like a scavenger hunt. What? Said Hennepin. You better hurry up and get hunting. Ramsay checked a diamond-studded watch that looked like a shackle on her skinny wrist. All those girls will be waking soon. They might find your clothes first and put them on by mistake. Then what will you wear? What? Said Hennepin. Ramsay leapt in front of the door and bowed dramatically, her arms indicating the heap of females beyond. Get going. Also, take off that blanket, that's cheating. It took a few moments for Hennepin to realize that no, Ramsay was not joking. Even then she held the blanket tight around her, rising carefully from the bed and making sure no fold flapped in the wrong direction. I'm keeping the blanket, Hennepin said. Oh, fine. Said Ramsay. You really do ruin all the fun. She ushered Hennepin outside. Sloane, having nothing better to do and feeling awkward near the zombified Carmichael, followed them out. Hennepin threaded her way through the bestrewn bodies, testing patches of ground with her foot before stepping. She used both hands to ensure her blanket stayed put as she stooped to inspect a discarded undergarment, only to assess it as not belonging to her and shying away with a disgusted face. Ramsay giggled and clapped. This is some prime torture. Truly grade A. From across the room, Claire's sister Lynette clutched a motionless body and curled over it like a vampire about to drain a victim. She looked up from her pursuits and watched Hennepin tiptoe around the room. What's going on? Oh, Lynette. Said Ramsay. You're here too? Lynette, meet Sloane. Sloane, meet Lynette. We've met, said Sloane. Lynette winked at Sloane. What did that mean? Sloane did not like this one bit. While Ramsay was equally insane as Delaney, at least Delaney had a measure of common sense. They ought to be interrogating Hennepin right now. Learning what tricks Claire prepared, what other girls she enlisted to the fight. Figure out Anoka's powers. Hell, figure out Hennepin's powers, since Carmichael shot her before she had a chance to use them. Maybe they could press gang Hennepin into helping them. Bind her arms and threaten to kill her unless she used her powers in their defense. But unless Sloane knew those powers, such hypothesizing was worthless. Everything was worthless. Just give Hennepin her damn clothes back. The sight of her making such measured and tepid progress, so far she had only found a sock, disgusted Sloane. Do interrogation the old-fashioned way, beat it out of her. What's wrong, Sloaney Poo? Said Ramsay. You seem tense. Maybe it's because I'm the only one taking this seriously. Taking what seriously? Said Lynette. Ramsay butted in. She's probably talking about how we're planning to kill your... Sloane clamped a hand over Ramsay's mouth. Lips moved against the palm as only muffled noises came out. Do you have any conception of reality, hissed Sloane, any at all? She felt anxious. Girls on the ground were waking up, staring at her to see what the commotion was about. Ramsay's spit was getting all over Sloane's hand, so she let go. How rude, said Ramsay. Can I talk to you? Privately, said Sloane. From across the room, Lynette winked again. Sloane glared as she led Ramsay back into the bedroom. Carmichael had started another round of the video game, which he spent tracking down Hennepin's unmanned avatar and slaying without remorse. Sloane shut the door behind them. Ramsay, I need you to listen to me. What we are doing is serious. I need you to be serious about it. I can't stay here forever. It's only a matter of time before the Terminatrix finds this place. Do you understand? Ramsay's pupils were huge and she kept fidgeting under Sloane's grasp, the strands of her fur coat itching Sloane's palms. Hey! Unhand me! Why are you being so rough? I don't like this. Sloane didn't like it either. She didn't like how Ramsay was not anchored to the same lived experience as everyone else in the world, how she flitted between coherence and capriciousness with reckless and unpredictable abandon, how she exuded lack of competence in any and all aspects, and how Sloane's memories of her combat abilities from the old days were unpromising at best. Look, Ramsay. I don't want to be mean to you. Mostly because some magical influence of Ramsay's was altering her mind to make her think that. But I am engaged in war right now, do you understand? War. I do not have time for silly games. If Sloane fought hard, she could override the impulses invading her head that screamed leave poor Ramsay alone. Gradually, she allowed more malice to creep into her voice. I'm not fucking around, Ramsay. I cannot afford fucking around. I need you to focus or sober up or fix whatever the hell is inherently wrong with your degenerate self and help me, or I am fucking gone, do you understand? Ramsay shrank beneath Sloane's glare. Her coat seemed to shrivel as her muscles tensed and she tried to flinch away. Hey, stop! That's not a nice thing to say. Her voice became tinny and weak. The faux British accent evaporated, replaced by something nasally and quiet. No, it's not. Sloane steeled herself to overpower her unnatural inclination to apologize. I don't give a shit. I'm not about to have 7 months of work upended by a stupid bimbo like you. Do you understand? The transformation continued. For the first time, Sloane recognized Ramsay as the same girl she had known when she ruled Minneapolis. Tiny, awkward. Her previously unblemished face broke in spontaneous acne. Her knees buckled and she swayed under Sloane's grip. Stop. Please. I need to drill this into your puny skull. I am the one in charge here. What I say goes. If you want to continue your little drug ring after I reclaim this city, you will do what I say. Got it, you? You little. The foul word she wanted to say would not come out. The sympathy and pity she held for the decomposing creature overwhelmed and choked her. A last-ditch effort of Ramsay's magic to protect herself from Sloane's ire. The word need not be said, however. Ramsay trembled even more in the silent void where the word would have gone, her stammers too partial to even turn into morphemes. Stop sniveling. Stop it. Sloane said. Ramsay did not stop. Her deterioration had been so rapid, so easy, and it only made Sloane angrier. She slapped the sunglasses off Ramsay's face. I said stop it. Ramsay's eyes rolled up and she fainted onto her bed. Immediately a wave of disgust swept over Sloane. Not at poor, pitiful Ramsay, but at herself. How could she abuse such a defenseless creature? How could she be so cruel? The thoughts invaded her head unbidden and did not disappear no matter how hard she attempted to dispel them. She tried to tell herself it was Ramsay's magic making her think such things, but all logic and reason disappeared beneath the revulsion that combusted across her brain. Nausea bubbled in the back of her throat and she fought to hold it down. She kneeled, buried her head against the carpet, took deep breaths. She passed out again. Carmichael stood over the bed and inspected Ramsay. What you say to her? She don't take well to criticism. There was this scary white-haired girl the other day, come and yell at her, and oh wow you shoulda seen it. Boss was in dire straits. At least 3 hours afore she recovered. People don't usually say mean things to her, do they? Carmichael shook his head. Nope. People love the boss. She a nice girl, you shouldn't be so hard on her. She makes sure all her girls taken care of. I work for some people afore her, and compared to them she a goddamn saint, you hear? But nah, you gotta go and be all mean. You and that white-haired girl. White-haired girl. Claire. No wonder Ramsay wanted her dead. Maybe Sloane had fucked up by shouting at her. Maybe Ramsay didn't deserve it anyway. It was hard to tell what was legitimate regret and what was solely prompted by Ramsay's magic. What was certain was Sloane could not eschew potential allies. Obviously Ramsay responded to criticism poorly. Sloane needed diplomacy and gentle persuasion to get what she wanted out of her. Sloane was really shitty at diplomacy and gentle persuasion. I'll fetch the water, said Carmichael with a sigh. Hope she don't take no 3 hours to wake up this time. He exited. Through the open door, Sloane watched as Lynette tugged on the corner of Hennepin's blanket while Hennepin swatted Lynette with her sock. Sloane wanted Delaney back. Cornflakes again. Bloomington sat at the kitchen counter and ground dry flakes to dust between her teeth. The sandy crumbs coagulated with her spit into a molasses paste that oozed down her throat as she swallowed with strained and painful gulps. She gnawed the plastic spoon as she regarded her half-eaten bowl and mentally prepared herself for the next bite. Your grade's bad, girl, said her mother. She flapped a dog-eared report card in Bloomington's face. What you gotta say for yourself? Bloomington forced a spoonful of cornflakes into her mouth. Math, D+. English, C. History, D. Chemistry, F. Ceramics, D. How you get a D in ceramics? How you get a D in physical education? You get graded just for showing up. Chew. 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 Swallow. Why ain't you in school right now? It's late enough. Go on, get off your lazy ass and get. Ma, it's Christmas break, said Bloomington. Her mother tisked as though the response failed expectations. These cornflakes made Bloomington want to retch. You know what Donnie do when it Christmas break, she said. Arms folded, slippered foot tapping. He study for next semester. He got his nose in them books. Now he off to state college and he gonna be a doctor. And where'd the money come from to send him there, Ma? Why'd he suddenly get that full-ride scholarship the same time Bloomington started hanging out late at nights and skipping school? Bloomington took another bite. I ain't gonna have no daughter turn out to be a whore, said her mother. I ain't. Either you straighten your act or I'll beat you senseless, you hear? You ain't got no ambition, you ain't got no plans. What you wanna be when you grow up? Bloomington swallowed. I wanna be alive. Her mother swatted her with the rolled-up report card. There's that crazy talk again. I swear. My poor heart can't take this. It can't take to watch you turn into a goddamn whore before my own eyes. She threw up her hands and stormed down the hallway, leaving the report card behind. Echoes of her lamentations faded away until ultimately silenced by a slamming door in another corner of the shifty house. Somewhere a dog barked. What was today? Wednesday? Thursday? Bloomington forgot. She done no wraith hunting in 2 days. If she skipped tonight, she would hurt bad tomorrow. Hurt bad, but still function. She'd rather not stretch the line, though. All the more reason to ignore the boss's bullshit. Let the old M and the new M duke it out, winner take all. Shoot, if the Terminatrix hung around they might both wind up dead and that'd mean they get a brand new boss. Bloomington had seniority, but she had no desire to paint a huge target on her back. Let Hennepin take it, girl was competent enough and kept to herself. Of course, once someone gets power no telling what changes happen in their mind. She still had half her cornflakes but tossed the bowl into the trash. The less time she spent in this house the better, but she had nowhere to go. Not with the storm outside, which showed no signs of slowing. Fucking Minnesota. Hey. Bloomington turned. Did she hear something? A voice? The wind? Are you there? Definitely a voice. Bloomington moved toward a front window caked with frost and condensation. She pulled herself onto the couch propped in front of it and breathed on the glass. Someone out there? She asked. I can barely hear you. Hey. Bloom. It's me, Woodbury. Bloomington rubbed her hand in a circle against the window and peered onto the front lawn. A long and thick trail of blood coated the snow, extending all the way to the end of the street. Kneeling beside a half-buried and overturned bicycle was Woodbury. The gnomish figure held her head bowed as ice piled atop her. The figure slumped to the side and curled up in the gathering snow. I don't feel good, she said as Bloomington sprinted for the door. Chapter 22, Torn to Pieces. Despite Carmichael's best efforts, Ramsay did not wake from her faint. She tossed on her bed, her forehead a cold sweat, her fur coat ratty and rumpled. She mumbled in her sleep while partygoers attended her. When the room got crowded, Sloane ducked out. Females slithered across the carpet. Sloane waited past them to a window and peeked through the blinds. A docile street scene awaited her, silent suburban houses, modest sedans, fire hydrants and street lights and stop signs, plastic reindeer and twinkling stars, joy to the world and peace on earth, all buried beneath 6 inches of snow with more falling. In the distance a half-shrouded column of light that may have been the pillar of the plains. Who the fuck knew where this was? Sloane could not even assume they were in Ramsey County, because metro girls lived all over. Mendota Heights or Little Canada, Maplewood or Arden Hills, Richfield or Edina, Eagan or Burnsville. Lynette sat nearby, sinking her fangs into the throat of someone who looked too young to be here. What city is this? Sloane asked. After gorging herself, Lynette raised her head. Minneapolis. We're in Minneapolis. Lynette thought for a moment, shrugged, and returned to her meal. Sloane watched with mounting disgust until finally something broke and she grabbed the girl Lynette fondled and tossed her out of range of Lynette's arms. Hey. I'm serious. Where the fuck am I? I dunno, north of St. Paul. What's it matter? This city is all the same. North of St. Paul. Which meant a long trek to reach Eden Prairie and Clare Ibsen. In the tundra, with a Terminatrix on her ass and Claire's bird on the prowl, Sloane stood no chance. The weather prevented public transportation, but Ramsay had a car. The plows had not come yet, but maybe by the time Ramsay woke up. Her best strategy was to wait. Even though that meant who knew how many hours in this foul-smelling house. At least it gave her time to calibrate her strategies now that she no longer had Delaney to rely on. She turned to find a more empty corner of the house for meditation, but Lynette grabbed the tail of her coat. "Hey! You! You really are the missing twin, aren't you? What makes you say that? Chelsea called you Sloane." "Who the fuck is Chelsea?" said Sloane. Lynette looked at her like she was the biggest idiot in existence. You know? Sunglasses? Dalmatian fur coat? Bling bling." "Puella Deville," muttered a voice across the room. It was Hennepin, be-shirted but pantsless and engaged in a tug-of-war with a sleeping girl for her jacket. "Oh," said Sloane. "Yeah. Her. Ramsay's real name would be Chelsea." "I know a lot of people who would be really interested to know you're around," said Lynette. "Everyone thinks you're dead. Claire thinks you're dead." "I doubt it," said Sloane. She searched for a way out of this conversation. "You're the only friend she's ever had, you know," said Lynette. "I remember when she first met you. She told us all about it at the dinner table. That was back when my parents still cared if I ate at the dinner table or if I came home at all. But hey, there must be a reason you up and disappeared one day. Stop talking to her and everything." "Why do you care?" said Sloane. Lynette leaned in confidentially. "Consider my sister an interest of mine. The whole time you two were friends, my main thought was how anyone could be friends with her. What kind of hopeless creature would stoop so low?" Sloane didn't understand. Claire took great pains to present herself to the outside world as a kind and personable individual. Everyone liked her, everyone was her friend, because she did not depress them and asked nothing of them. "When you disappeared," she cried, and all, but I knew. I knew she had something to do with it. I thought they'd find your bones under our floorboards." "Nothing like that," said Sloane. Lynette sank deeper into her seat and stared ahead. "But you do hate her, right? Something changed. Right? I no longer consider us friends." "You saw something of her. Something inside her. Right? Didn't you?" Sloane said nothing. An absent-minded hand crawled down the side of Lynette's chair and seized the neck of a bottle of vodka, either the same as before or a new one. Lynette raised the bottle to her lips and took a pained swig. "My sister is an anomaly. Some kind of genius. I always got, you know, okay grades in school. Nothing fantastic, but they weren't awful either. But then she comes along and, poof, everything perfect, everything flawless. Awards and honors. Every day some new accolade. I got buried beneath the trophies and medals and certificates. Lost and forgotten." It had the makings of a drunken rant, the more complicated words slurred and stuttered. Lynette no longer seemed to care much about Sloane, but Sloane decided to linger a little longer. She knew what Lynette meant. Not about Claire, Claire's excellence had never impacted their relationship. But Sloane had a sister of her own, a sister who although blind was heralded as a great student and model citizen. Nowhere on Claire's level, but her blindness made even ordinary achievements into pinnacles of the human condition. At least in the eyes of Sloane's parents. Funny how in fleeing the shadow of one colossus, Sloane stumbled at the feet of an even taller one. "But that was all normal enough," Lynette continued. Except I'm pretty sure Claire did it specifically to annihilate me." "What?" "As the older sister, I always, you know, teased her as a kid. Like older siblings just fucking do. And she made it so easy, with her albinism and her mannerisms and her stilted speech patterns. She always got so upset, which just made me want to torment her more. I knew she hated me for it. She never said anything, but I could tell. There's that subtle demeanor, it's unmistakable. I think you know what I mean." Sloane did not, actually. If Claire had ever hated her, she had missed it. She always assumed Claire incapable of emotions either positive or negative. "Her revenge was slow but total. All those awards. I went from the older sister to barely part of the family. She never said a word to me, but I knew. I knew. And here I am now." She took another drink. Sloane had no idea how much was truth and how much the inventions of a drunkard. It seemed impossible that Claire would have been anything less than a paragon of success in academia had she not been bullied by her sister at a young age. Perfection was too integral a component of Claire's psyche. "I hate that fucking bitch," said Lynette with a note of finality. "Amen," said Sloane. "She always seemed to love you, though. She'd tell us about you at dinner. That was when my parents still cared if I sat at the table or even came home at all." Sloane did not bother to tell Lynette she already said that. "Every night. Sloane did this. Sloane said that. Sloane was nice to me. Sloane made me happy. Sloane made me happy. She needed you. Everyone else in the world could sniff her out like the pariah she was. They had an instinctual understanding that she was not like everyone else, that she was different, barely even human. Maybe her albino bullshit did it. But you were somehow gullible enough to fall for her disguise. Joke's on you." She gave a good-natured laugh, like this was playful ribbing, and nudged Sloane in the side. "Good thing you did, too. She probably wouldn't be around if not for you." "What?" said Sloane. "Oh yeah." Lynette laughed again and shook Sloane's wrist idly. "She totally tried to kill herself before she met you. Plunged a carving knife into her stomach 3 times. We had to rush her to the hospital because the ambulance wouldn't come fast enough. Crazy." This seemed made up. Of all the people Sloane knew, Claire was the last to attempt suicide. It made no sense compared to everything Sloane knew about Claire. She was too confident, too excellent, too successful for such a thing. A ploy for attention? A carefully planned attempt to reroute the power structure in her household? Sloane could see Claire online, researching places to stab herself without dealing a fatal wound. "She left a note, too. I was the one who found it, I never showed Mom and Dad. Claire probably knew I had it and maybe that was another reason she wanted to destroy me." "What did the note say?" said Sloane. "I discussed myself." Lynette tilted her head back and unleashed an unearthly cackle. "Even she disgusts herself. Even she knows she's defective. Ha, ha, ha." According to Lynette, this happened before Claire met Sloane. Which meant before she contracted, before the energy of her soul would heal her grievous wounds. Still, it made no sense. "The worst thing is, when I found her," Lynette continued, "I thought maybe I should just let her die, you know? And you know what's even crazier?" Her eyes glimmered with cataracts. "What's even crazier is every single day of my life I regret I didn't." She hiccuped and lobbed her half-empty bottle across the room. It thudded against the carpet but did not shatter, which seemed to plunge Lynette into absolute disappointment. The silence was an opportunity to flee the conversation. Sloane found an open door and pressed for it, uncertain of the dimensions or directions of the house. The deeper corners had even sparser lighting than those she had already explored, with longer shadows and ominous umbral splotches. Fewer girls lay about these extra rooms, which lacked furniture to indicate their function or purpose, if they ever had one at all. Other than few stray sofas and the bed, the house seemed devoid of anything, a mere agglomeration of shapes and swatches of carpet. She wandered into a kitchen with no refrigerator and no stove, murky spaces where both ought to be, a few stray ends of severed tubing and sharp jutting wires. Bottles stood atop the counter, most overturned, some shattered. Sloane tried the light switch but nothing happened. "Excuse me," said Hennepin. She bustled past Sloane in a motley collection of clothing that at least covered her skin. She kneeled by the counter and tried all the cabinets, sorting through the cobweb-strewn spaces within. She slammed each door after. Sloane watched her check the empty spaces of the kitchen. "This is so stupid." Hennepin threw up her arms. "And invasive. Can't you just smash my kneecaps like a normal terrorist?" "Terrorist? That's what Claire calls me now." "Nah." She leaned over the counter and scanned the adjacent room. "Honestly, I have like the tiniest, most fleeting connection to her. I don't know why I bothered to waste my life with this whole thing, and now I'm missing valuable stream time." "Stream time?" "Yeah, you know." Hennepin stared at her like she was an idiot, but Sloane was so used to that by now she hardly found it offensive. "Video games? I stream myself playing games and people online watch me. And I get ad revenue, which is the big thing. Beats prostitution or peddling coke. It's how I pay my rent, which if I recall correctly, kinda do in like a week." "Yep." Sloane knew because until like 4 days ago she had to pay rent in Fargo.
Ugh. I can't get evicted again.
Hennepin reached into a jacket pocket and retrieved a case of cigarettes and a lighter. With cool and practiced efficiency she lit one and stuck it into the corner of her mouth.
I know you won't believe me, but I honestly have no interest in this battle between you and Minneapolis. Old boss same as the new boss, I keep my nose out of politics so I keep my nose plus the rest of my face. I'm not going to let you go,
said Sloane.
But I won't kill you. I'm only here for Claire.
Sigh, said Hennepin. Meaning she actually said the word sigh, rather than actually sigh. She exhaled smoke.
Was worth a shot. What's the point of being good at everything when nothing you do matters?
Sloane decided she had pretended to be chummy the requisite amount of time to start asking for information.
What are your powers? My powers?
Hennepin considered for a moment.
A hodgepodge of everything. I'd love to show off, but unfortunately that black guy has my gem so I can't. Pretty much I have a magic crystal thing and it does some stuff. It can be defensive or offensive. Since it's a crystal. Describe this crystal. You know.
Hennepin waved her hands to show.
Like, have you ever played Final Fantasy? No.
This knocked the momentum out of Hennepin's explanation.
Well, the shape doesn't matter. The point is, it's hard as fuck so I can use it to block attacks, or I can slam it into people to beat the shit out of them. And when light strikes it. Light. Yeah, light. Minneapolis mentioned you had a light-related power, so basically you had no hope against me. My crystal absorbs light like a prism and either shoots it back out as a laser or these, like, healing rays. I usually keep a flashlight on me to make it work, but I'd be pretty up against someone like you.
She laughed, the cigarette bobbing on her lower lip. So Sloane was right, Claire had specifically picked girls that had abilities to counter Sloane. Neutralizing Hennepin had been a fortuitous stroke. She, St. Paul, and probably Anoka were the primary goons to keep an eye on. Speaking of which,
and Anoka? Who is she, what does she do?
Hennepin shrugged.
Nothing, as far as I can tell. She only showed up a few days ago. Minneapolis hired her instantaneously, and Ramsey too. I was at the tryout, so was Bloomington, and neither of us saw anything special about her at all.
That sounded suspicious.
What's her weapon? Some kind of curved sword. It had no special properties. Just a sword. Her form was shit too, I could tell. She must have some kind of magic, though. Based on her wish.
Hennepin took another long drag.
I'm sure she does, but she didn't use it when we had her show her moves, so I don't know what it is. Probably it's something that totally counters light magic. You're probably mega fucked.
Damn it. Smart of Claire to keep her key piece unknown to even her own underlings. The fact that of all the girls in Minneapolis only Anoka had not revealed herself indicated Claire kept her as a secret weapon, a final bomb to lob Sloane's way. That critical unknown undermined the stability of all her other certainties. She at least had an idea what Claire would do, what St. Paul would do, what Bloomington and Woodbury would do. Anoka could do anything, perhaps be a foolproof kryptonite against Sloane's powers.
So what do you do again?
Said Hennepin.
Minneapolis mentioned some stuff but I didn't pay attention. I'm curious now, though. You shoot light or what? I shoot light. Yeah, and what else?
Sloane gave it some thought.
I shoot light.
The kitchen filled with smoke. With each puff, Hennepin illuminated her face a pasty orange.
That's it? Wow. Why'd Claire bother with Bloomington or Woodbury? If she sent me, I'd have killed you first fight. I also make things way less.
Hennepin scrutinized her and laughed.
Oh, I get it. You mean you make things lighter? That's actually kinda clever. Claire told me to try it,
said Sloane.
It was her idea. Well shit, come on. Light is like, elemental. The amount of stuff light does is insane. No need to restrict yourself to just weaponizing it. You gotta be more creative. People keep telling me that.
Hennepin exhaled a ring of smoke.
I'll be straight with you, Fargo. I'm in a shitty position right now. I don't have my gem, I've not on great terms with either side in this war. So I'm gonna ameliorate my standing somewhat and game my odds a little by giving you some free insider advice on something you can maybe use to throw Minneapolis for a loop. Wanna hear?
No, not particularly. Sloane cared little for this girl and her know-it-all attitude, with her brazen assessment that she could defeat Sloane easily. She very much doubted Hennepin had much to offer anyway. Most likely she would suggest the same thing everyone suggested, the same thing Sloane's mind kept returning to whenever she tried to create a new ability, moving at the speed of light. Logically it made sense, but Sloane simply could not make herself do it. In fact, even the beams she fired from her gun moved slower than true light. Sloane had the sinking suspicion this stemmed from the sluggishness of her own mind. She could not make something move at a speed she did not have the mental capacity to comprehend or control.
Okay,
she said anyway.
Make an image of yourself. Or of anything, really. An image.
Sloane had seen girls who could create illusory doubles of themselves.
What does that have to do with light? Literally, anything visible has to do with light, said Hennepin. Seriously, that's basic third grader shit. Why do you think cameras flash? They send out light and capture the reflection to create imprints on a surface. Voila, photograph. Easy fucking peasy.
Photography? Yeah, now that Sloane thought about it. She remembered books from long ago, books about how stuff worked, computers, televisions, cameras.
Anyway.
Hennepin dashed her cigarette on the counter and flicked the butt into the sink.
Thank me later for my spontaneous wisdom and unparalleled intellect. When the newfound abilities you develop wind up the key factor for defeating Minneapolis, remember who it was who helped you out, yeah.
She pushed herself away from the counter, made a brisk turn, and returned the way Sloane had come. She moved fast and with a purpose, managing exceptional poise despite her pied outfit. The butt in the sink smoldered and died. Sloane wandered the labyrinthine corridors until she found a door to the backyard. The snowfall had lightened but the yard had completely disappeared beneath a thick white layer that sucked at Sloane's boots and forced her to walk with wide steps. The yard was small and enclosed by a tall picket fence. Only the top of the next house and a few trees were visible on the other side. No windows or vantage points for anyone to see her, and considering how many rooms Sloane had traversed to get here, she doubted anyone from the house would come either. She moved to the center of the yard and closed her eyes. The key component of all magic was visualization. She had done the same things so long she forgot the difficulty of honing one's powers, but she recalled many long nights with Claire as Claire instructed her how to stand, how to wave her arms, how to think and how to act. Empty the mind. Allow all thoughts to drain away. Purge the static from her head and achieve a serenity of purpose, the kind of oriental mumbo-jumbo spouted by Shaolin monks. It was difficult, her head fizzled with all sorts of mental detritus, fragments of conversations and doubts and hopes. She had to abandon all of it if she wanted this to work. The goal was simple, create a photograph of herself. Except instead of printed on glossy paper or a roll of film, she would imprint her image on the face of reality. She grabbed her soul gem from her pocket and transformed. By accident she summoned her machine gun because she was so used to creating it when she transformed. She banished it with a runic glow and left only herself standing in the center of an empty backyard with snow falling around her. After another breath, she held her arms in front of her. Her hands began to glow as she sent her magic to the tips of her fingers. For a split second the light flared into a massive flash, blinding Sloane and forcing her to blink. The light subsided. She looked around. No image of her or anything. Just the same old stuff. It took a lot of mental override to stop herself from quitting. She needed this, remember? She needed an ace on Claire, an untapped power to exploit. Hennepin had brought up an interesting point about Claire's strategy. Why had she wasted time with Bloomington and Woodbury, when she had players like St. Paul and Hennepin at her disposal? Her understanding of Claire's true character made the answer obvious. She had sent them as pawns to scout if Sloane had any tricks Claire did not expect. Claire always required complete and utter knowledge of a situation before making a move, but with that knowledge she always made the right move, the move that could not be countered. If Claire thought she knew everything but missed a key component of information, it was the surprise factor Delaney had mentioned. Sloane needed this edge. So she needed to keep trying. Focus. Use your mind. She breathed again and extended her hands. Another flash, another dud. Damn it, there's no time for this. Get it to work already. It seemed possible. She envisioned it like the light somehow blasting the thinnest layer of molecules from her skin to create a paper-thin replica of her, a shell or husk, stuck to reality by the force of the blast. She could see it, think it, so why was it not working? She tried again. 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 And she tried a bunch more times, but every time nothing happened and she only got colder and colder as more and more snow piled on top of her. This was so stupid. She was simply not a creative person. If Claire or Delaney tried, they would make it work. There was something plain wrong with Sloane's powers of conceptualization. Feeling foolish, she brushed the snow off her shoulders and wrenched her legs out of the snow on the ground. As she took her first step away, she noticed something in the holes her boots had left. She reoriented herself, her movements stilted and awkward in the deep fall, in order to better investigate. As she turned, she immediately realized it was not simply something strange in the snow, it was something strange in the air where she had stood. Thin, weak, and transient, but undeniably there, was a life-size image of Sloane, her face grimacing with concentration, her coattails frozen mid-flap. An immediate giddiness seized her. She did it. She made it work. She span her head in search of someone at whom to exclaim her accomplishment, but of course nobody was there. It didn't matter, she did it, and it wasn't even that hard. All she needed was the idea and she could do it. Her hyper-powered soul gem probably facilitated the process, but whatever. The point was, she had done a thing. She had done it. Well, wait. Done what exactly? She scrutinized the image of herself. It looked like her, sure, but it was transparent and obviously fake, the fakeness exemplified by its frozen lack of motion. It was a facsimile of Sloane, yes, but a facsimile all but a simpleton could see as a facsimile. She waved her hand through her mock torso. The image broke apart and faded away after only a few swipes. Quickly, she created another flashbulb and inspected the new image. The same transience, the same fragility. What use did this have? A decoy? It would take any competent human being a fraction of a second to tell the difference. She threw up her arms in frustration. Pointless. Why fucking bother? Too cold to stay out much longer, she clomped for the door back to Ramsey's house. She made it 2 steps and stopped. Dripping onto the snow was a phantom blood with no identifiable source.
Omaha, she said.
Hi, Sloane. What are you doing? Sloane checked again to ensure nobody spied on her.
I'm trying a new ability to use on Claire.
Oh, that's good. That's really good, Sloane. I'm glad you're doing that. I really think you can beat her.
Yeah, well, it didn't work.
Oh. Drip drop went Omaha's blood. A reddening circle spread through the snow. Well, I mean, I'm here to tell you something important actually. Great, more advice from Omaha. Sloane supposed she had every ostensible right to trust the girl. She had, after all, warned Sloane about the Terminatrix, and then pulled her out of the way of a bullet. Her disappearance during the subsequent scuffle with Claire's troops could be overlooked somewhat.
What is it?
Can you look behind you? At that fence? Sloane slowly turned her head toward the backyard fence.
Okay.
Do you see anything?
I see a fence.
Yeah, but anything else? Koi games placed low on the list of things Sloane cared for.
Snow. Some treetops. A roof.
Sloane, this is really, really important. Can you try looking a little harder? If Delaney or anyone else had asked, Sloane would have yelled at them to stop fucking around, but she doubted Omaha had the propensity for japes. She squinted her eyes and stared hard at the fence. It was a fence.
There's nothing there.
Okay. Omaha's tread crunched through the snow, leaving phantom footprints until she stopped at Sloane's side. You said you were practicing a new technique. Do you mind if I suggest something else new for you to try?
Might as well.
Okay. Another uncertain pause. Sloane heard the ruffling of a sleeve and envisioned Omaha wringing her wounded arm. I want you to try and see me.
You're invisible. I can't see you.
Sloane. Your powers are derived from sight, isn't that true? I overheard you tell the others about your wish. You healed your sister's blindness. You can heal the eyes of others. Is it so hard for you to use your power to see the invisible? Especially now that you're so strong. It'll be easy for you to overpower my abilities with your own. That made sense, Sloane guessed. Like the photography thing, she had never even thought to use her powers in such a way, but at least this time she had the excuse of lack of application. The only invisible person she had ever met was Omaha, and the issue of using your power to directly counter another girl's power basically became an arm wrestling contest. She focused on the empty space in the snow where Omaha's blood ran. See the invisible. Like Superman. X-ray vision. The more she thought about it, the more she wondered why she had never even considered it back when Omaha was tailing them around Williston. Of course, back then Sloane's strength was at its lowest point. With unexpected ease, Omaha popped into view. Sloane almost thought the girl had done it herself, but a faint shadowy aura pervaded around her, much the way things looked on those occasions Omaha made Sloane disappear. Her outfit shimmered with the dampness of her blood, some of it frozen into icy chunks. She trembled in the snow like a twittering machine, something about to go off the fritz and burst in a conniption of gears and springs.
That was easy.
You can see me? Yes, it would be easy. I'm pretty weak right now. It's a heavy drain on my soul gem to replenish the blood I lose through my wrist. But I'm glad you can see me. Sloane regarded the gash on Omaha's wrist. If it still bled, it meant Delaney remained alive. Why would Claire spare her, though? It only brokered the risk of Sloane rescuing her, and Claire played a risk-adverse game. Did she plan to use Delaney as a hostage? Freeze or I kill her. Ha. Ha.
When was the last time you purified your gem?
Sloane asked. Don't worry about me, Sloane. It's unimportant. I need you to look at the fence again. Look for something invisible, okay? Sloane turned to the fence, her mouth already open to formulate that it would be helpful if she knew what she was supposed to see beforehand, but the words stopped short in her throat because she saw what Omaha meant at the first glance. In a row along the fence were 4 small girls, their hands clinging to the edge as they stared over from the next yard over, 2 blondes, 1 redhead, and 1 wearing a big round cap with tassels. At first they looked like ordinary girls, but as Sloane stared harder, she noticed unnatural features scrawled across their faces, strange elliptical eyes with dots for pupils but no irises, snaggletooth smiles with red lips, pure white faces. They did not look like living things, but rather golems of some sort, or dolls. They stared back at Sloane with their dreadful eyes. Sloane shivered.
What the hell are those? She asked.
They are servants of the Time Demon, said Omaha. She has sent them to destroy you.
Time Demon?
More like the cheap trick of a magical girl. Perhaps Anoka, or maybe Claire, who already kept a familiar in the form of a bird. Maybe Omaha herself, in an attempt to scare her. I'm telling you the truth. Why do you still refuse to believe? I've told you, Claire told you, even Delaney told you. Can't you see that you're involved in something far greater than yourself?
I don't care if God himself, or herself, wants to strike me down. You can't dissuade me from what I intend to do. I have nothing else.
I know. I'm not telling you to stop. In fact, even if you did stop, they would still kill you. The Terminatrix, the demon's dolls.
Wait.
With one eye trained on the dolls, who made no movement beyond slight tilts of their heads, she examined Omaha.
If these dolls are invisible, how the hell do you see them?
Omaha swallowed hard and hung her mouth open. The little remaining color drained from her face as she averted her eyes to the ground and dug her fingers into the raw-rubbed flesh above her wrist. I mean, I'm invisible. I can see other things that are invisible.
You little rat, you made those dolls, didn't you? What are you trying to pull? You've been suspicious this entire time, who the hell really are you?
She seized Omaha by the collar and tugged her close, shaking the little body until the head bobbed back and forth on the neck. Omaha gaped with fearful eyes as Sloane considered her options. 1. Smack the bitch until she came clean with the real story behind the demon garbage. 2. Please, please Sloane, please stop. Her mental voice shriveled into a squeak. Absolute terror filled her features as Sloane realized she had raised an arm to slam on Omaha's skull. Sloane released Omaha and lowered her arm. She pressed a hand against her forehead and lowered it to rub her eyes. It had been only a few minutes ago she acted this way to Ramsay and made the dem girl faint. What the hell was wrong with her? Why did she abuse on everyone she met?
Bah, I'm sorry,
she managed to say. Omaha adjusted her collar and scratched her throat. In a moment she acted as though nothing had happened, although her normal self was so meek it was hard to tell a difference. Sloane, please listen. Those dolls are not to be underestimated. They are extremely powerful. More than me, for sure, and maybe more than you. When they find the right opportunity, they'll strike. The only reason they haven't yet is because I'm here. But soon they'll realize I'm not what they think I am. I'm sorry I can't explain this better, there's lots of stuff I can't tell you. I understand if you don't trust me. By now, Sloane had no idea who to trust. So many things flung themselves at her, so many pieces splayed across an infinity chessboard. Claire and the rest of the Minneapolis Seven, Omaha and Delaney, the Terminatrix, Carmichael and Claire's sister Lynette, Time Demon and Female God, Cube, these 4 doll girls watching her from over the fence. When all she really wanted was the simplest possible scenario, her versus Claire, no extraneous goons or ghouls, the sheerest and swiftest end to this entire farce that masqueraded as Sloane's life. She had one purpose, and one purpose only, all other purposes had long since disintegrated into the wasteland of her existence, and that purpose was to end Claire. Nothing that came after mattered, demons and Cube be damned. I really just wanted to warn you. So you could watch out for them. The longer you stay alive, the more the demon will try to kill you. She has 15 dolls in total, I don't know if she's sent more but these are the only 4 I've seen. And if things get really bad, she may even come herself.
So I should hurry up and finish Claire.
Omaha bit her lip and adjusted her round glasses. I mean, if that's what you want.
I don't have a choice. They'll kill me either way. Might as well go down as something less than a total failure.
If you really want to fight Claire, I recommend you do it tonight. The dolls won't wait long. I can maybe distract them for a little bit, but soon they'll figure out I'm not what they think I am and then I don't know what I can do.
What do they think you are?
She asked. The dolls made no movements, no sounds. Only watched. That's unimportant. What's important is you do what you want. I'm sorry, I know I'm an annoyance. I'm not good for much. But what little help I can give, I hope you find useful. Sloane sighed. Her breath came out as a thick white puff in the frigid air.
Omaha, you're not useless. I don't know what you are, but it's not that. Look, you're right. I can't waste time. I have the Terminatrix after me, and the more time I give Claire to plan the more advantages I drop in her lap. I'll wake up Ramsay right now and start moving.
Okay. That's a good plan. I'll keep an eye on the dolls for you and help however I can.
Thanks.
Sloane turned from Omaha and the dolls, although anxiety overcame her at having her back to such eerie things, so she glanced over her shoulder to ensure they did not leap en masse from the fence and charge her with whatever their means of attack. But the dolls did not move, and neither did Omaha. She stomped through the snow as wind and ice pelted her back. When she reached the door, Omaha's voice said, "Sloane, good luck." Sloane nodded, turned the handle, and stepped into the darkened interior of the house. The moment she shut the door behind her, the light clicked on. Ramsay stood inside, 10 to 15 girls arrayed at her back in almost military formation, all with limp gazes and matted hair. Among them were Hennepin and Lynette. Carmichael stood in the back, about 2 feet taller than any of the girls. Ramsay cocked a shotgun and aimed it at Sloane's face.
I recall you saying some mean things about me, slow dog. Care to say them again, bitch?
Bloomington's foot snagged on something, a root, a pipe buried beneath the snow, and after a precarious moment where she fought to hold her balance, she dropped onto her shoulder into the frost, keeping her arms wrapped tight around Woodbury to shield her from the brunt of impact. Woodbury cried out anyway with an asphyxiated and voiceless grunt wet with the blood she coughed onto Bloomington's chest. They were miles from Claire's house. Claire had not answered her cell phone after 3 tries, and Bloomington did not know St. Paul's number, if St. Paul even had a cell phone. In fact, Bloomington knew nobody else's number. And in a storm like this, public transportation no longer ran. Not that any sane bus driver would let Woodbury ride with her whole damn throat missing.
Come on, up you go,
said Bloomington. She tried to find a solid surface beneath the snow to push against. For the past 3 blocks she had basically carried Woodbury. She was drenched in blood from the girl's throat, blood that sizzled like ice against her as it plastered her clothes to her skin. She pushed up, misjudged the weight and balance, flopped back down. Woodbury grunted again.
You gotta work with me here, Woodsy. Come on, we push on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Bloomington pushed again, but Woodbury remained dead weight in her arms. They barely got inches off the ground before they dropped again.
That's okay, that's okay. 3rd time's the charm.
Let's lie here. And rest. For just a little. They needed to keep moving. If they stayed still, then Woodbury. Then it wouldn't be good.
Nope, we'll get buried in the snow. We're gonna try again, alright? On 3, like before.
Just a little rest.
1, 2, 3.
Bloomington pushed, but Woodbury did not rise. She closed her eyes and coiled her arms around Woodbury. The girl had no warmth left in her, as though every drop of blood had drained from her body. It's okay, Bloom. Thanks for caring about me.
Look, if you're in bad shape, it means one of us has to pull double duty to cover your territory, and I always tend to pull the short straw when that happens. We're almost at Claire's, I think it's just like a block from here. She'll fix you up in no time, I'm sure. I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding with that hostage. Okay.
No response.
Okay, Woodsy.
I'm glad I don't have to die alone. Oh God. Oh God, no. Please God, if you're listening, if you've got your omnipotent ear trained on the thoughts of these 2 hopeless girls stuck in a snowstorm halfway between Brooklyn Park and Eden Prairie, please don't let this happen. Woodbury was too young for this, God. Don't you see? Don't you see she's too young for this? But God didn't listen. God didn't care. God didn't exist. The closest thing any of them ever got was Cube, and not even he was here, not that he would lift a single floppy ear to help.
Come on Woodsy, don't talk like that. We're so close. So close. I can see her house just around the corner. Come on, all we have to do is get up and get moving and it's easy. Come on. Woodsy? Woodbury? Hey, come on.
Bloomington felt the small heave of Woodbury's chest as it made labored and ragged breaths through the severed throat.
Come on, talk to me. Say something, please.
The tiny lump of Woodbury trembled a little and fell still. Bloomington clutched her tighter, trying to imbue it with a spark of warmth, but she had barely any to give.
Say something, anything.
Woodbury said nothing. The next moment, Bloomington held nothing, only air. The empty space that had once been Woodbury closed immediately as Bloomington's arms collapsed against her body. Her numb fingers pressed into her blood-soaked jacket. For a time, nothing happened. Bloomington lay on her side in the snow as more snow fell atop her, collecting into piles on her shoulders and head. The piles grew wider and heavier and Bloomington sagged beneath their weight, allowing the ice to envelop her as she stared ahead at the white absence. Then she started to cry. Chapter 23, The Thick Rotundity. When one considered it logically. Which was the only way to consider anything. When one took apart the various intricacies and rearranged them to construct a more complete image of what first appeared an inexplicable circumstance. When one did that, which was what Claire did throughout the night in lieu of sleep, when one exhausted every possibility through arduous mental experiments. When one tested every hypothesis and scourged it with rigorous scrutiny. When one did that, one might emerge with the following list of key postulates. Postulate 1. The albinism of Claire Ibsen and Delaney Pollock was no coincidence. Albinism afflicted less than 1 in 20,000 people, the odds became astronomical when factoring their identical age, sex, race, magical girl status, and general geographic proximity. Postulate 2. There existed an underlying reason for the shared affliction. Since the connection was not coincidental. Postulate 3. Claire Ibsen and Delaney Pollock were genetically related. Albinism being a hereditary genetic disorder. Postulate 4. Claire Ibsen and Delaney Pollock were not twins. Delaney Pollock was born November 14, 1995, Claire Ibsen was born November 29, 1995. Postulate 5. Claire Ibsen and Delaney Pollock were either paternal half-sisters or full sisters birthed from separate surrogate mothers. Their differing birth dates meant they could not have been birthed from the same womb. Next came her assumptions. They required some logical leaps in place of any bridges of proof. Hence her agonizing for hours in case some more obvious explanation existed. Ultimately, she failed to find one. First, she assumed that the shared genetic heritage not only explained their albinism but also why the incubator had chosen them to take into his personal confidence. He had imparted to both Claire and Delaney information about Homura Akemi, the Japanese city of Magica, and several other key components of the true theology that guided the conceptual framework of the world. Their shared genes also possibly explained the similar facets of their personalities, their logical calculating, their emotional detachment, their lack of empathy or even understanding of other human beings. If she could speak to the incubator for a few minutes, she would know the truth. But as he had warned her, his employer's watchful eye prevented him from appearing. As such, Claire could only verge into wild and pointless theories. Which she did for hours, not even realizing hours had passed as she paced around the hallways of her house while St. Paul watched Delaney in her room. A single tick of the clock in the rhythm of her mind meant a minute in reality. She had deliberated enough. It was time to open the conversation to Delaney. The girl had proven a creature of exceptional intelligence, which was a compliment Claire did not bestow lightly. It was possible she might have insights which, when combined with Claire's postulates, could create new knowledge.
"Honey, I made breakfast," chimed her mother down the stairs. "Bacon and scrambled eggs, your favorites."
Claire had no favorite foods. She detested the act of consumption and did it as little as possible.
"I will eat at my leisure, mother." "Okay, honey. Tell Lynette to come too."
Lynette had not been in this household for the past 12 hours. A catastrophic snowstorm did little to deter such a flighty girl from her pursuits. Banishing thoughts of family, Claire navigated the corridors to her room. She entered the familiar space, all traces of Woodbury's blood long since obviated with a dosage of magic. St. Paul sat on the bed, head propped on her hands. Claire bid her good morning as she shut the door. St. Paul blinked several times in rapid succession.
Hi. Hi Claire."
On the corner where Claire had left her, sprawled like a discarded toy that blemished the order of the space, lay Delaney. She slumbered noisily. One akimbo leg twitched with every stertorous exhalation. Her hair had returned to its fake brown color. Claire grudged not her desire to conceal her albinism. Claire nudged her shoulder with the tip of a shoe, and had to nudge again after the first attempt failed. Delaney rolled over, mumbled, and squinted open an eye.
"I have contemplated our shared condition at length," said Claire.
"I slept," said Delaney. She stretched out her arms and yawned.
"I reached the conclusion that we share paternal genes."
Delaney ran fingers through her clumped hair and sat up. She rubbed her eyes and checked the clock above Claire's desk.
"That's it? Took long enough." "I seek to be thorough and leave no avenues unexplored. All variables must be accounted and all possibilities considered. While sometimes the most obvious solution proves the best one, on numerous occasions my extensive meditations have opened pathways of which others remain ignorant." "You realize what this all means, right?"
said Delaney.
"I have ideas. I wish to hear what you make of it. Cubase controlled our existences since we were born. It's no coincidence we both got embroiled in this plot and also happen to be long-lost sisters. He needed two people with shared genetic traits, probably the shared genetic disposition toward sociopathy, to fill two important roles in his scheme. One to oppose and torment Sloane to the brink of oblivion, and one to help and protect her."
Yes. Claire thought the same.
"In doing so, he balances both sides of the conflict. Evens the playing field. And when the sides are even, the emotion escalates, the conflict escalates, the violence escalates. Exactly what he wants."
Claire pulled the chair from her desk and sat, crossing her legs and laying her hands on her knee.
"So he played a subtle influence on the trajectories of our lives since the start. He ensured that I befriended Sloane Redfern, that both of us contracted, perhaps even that we made the wishes we did and developed the powers we now wield."
Delaney fell silent. She adopted the same glazed expression that regularly manifested in St. Paul, her eyes staring intently but with no object deserving of such intent before them.
"Before I murdered the girl in Saskatoon, I had all these long conversations with him about whether God existed or not. The things he said led me to believe.
Her voice trailed off. Claire had too incomplete an image of Delaney's life to theorize how the incubator may have affected it. But her own life, in retrospect, was filled with such influences. Some were direct, such as when, while Sloane ruled Minneapolis, the incubator hinted to Claire that Sloane was dangerous and in need of removal, an idea she had already conceived on her own beforehand, but his subtle prodding allowed the idea to germinate into action. But some, perhaps, were indirect. She remembered when she first met Sloane, on a seemingly regular school day. Normally Claire kept to herself, eschewing all attempts at communication. But that day in particular, some unknown notion of loneliness had spurred her to introduce herself to Sloane when the disgruntled twin sat at her table. The pang of solitude had stricken deep on that day alone, and while she had found it annoying, she had never given it much thought because in the wake of her new friendship she realized all she had lacked when alone and considered her previous emotions justified despite their oddness. Now, however, she wondered if the sudden desire for companionship had been stimulated by hypnotic or subconscious persuasion on the part of the incubator, that, without having ever seen him or spoken to him, he somehow used psychic influences to make her think and feel the way she did. These were all hypotheticals.
I see only one problem with the idea that the incubator has monitored our growth since our infancy, she said. That means he formulated his plan at least 18 years ago. However, from what he indicated to me, Homura Akemi ascended to Demon Head 2 years ago.
Delaney roused from her stupor.
Yeah, but she's a time demon. When time gets thrown in, logic gets thrown out. Who knows what wonky time shit's gone on in those 2 years? A valid point. Although my status as a musician requires me to keep track of time. Thus, the discrepancy intrigues me. What the hell does that mean?
Said Delaney. Oh. Did she not know, or did she simply fail to understand Claire's meaning?
As the one who...
A voice hollered from downstairs,
Claire honey. You have a visitor.
Claire closed her eyes, decompressed herself, and sighed. Her mother's interruptions were always inopportune. However, a visitor most likely meant one of the girls under her command, which meant she had an obligation to at least shoo them away.
Pardon me, said Claire. We'll continue this conversation afterward.
After Delaney said nothing for a satisfactory interval, Claire left the room and traveled down the hall with brisk and purposeful steps. Most likely she would find Woodbury wondering why Delaney had not yet been dispatched. Claire would tell her to be patient and offer no further excuse. Woodbury need not know the truth of the matter, or that until Claire divined Delaney's place in the grander scheme, no further violence would ensue against the captive. Interesting that her mother had not remarked upon the slashed throat of their visitor, but then again, her mother's observational skills were rather lackluster. Her mother had already returned to the kitchen and only blathered effusively about the visitor waiting in the entry. Claire disregarded her and rounded the corner to see who had dragged themselves in. It was Bloomington. Snow plastered her jacket and hair along with the slick redness of blood. She leaned against the wall, her face drained pale from the frost and her eyes red and swollen from the wind.
Ah, Bloomington. So you decided to pay a visit. I hope all is well on your end.
Bloomington's nose ran in an offensive manner, worsened by her refusal to ask for tissue paper or some other absorbent material with which to wipe it. In fact, she seemed rather lackadaisical about her appearance. As such, Claire resolved to get rid of her even more tersely than anticipated.
Where's the bitch? Said Bloomington. With the blood. I believe you mean Delaney Pollock. I have made an executive decision to keep her alive for purposes of strategic value. My decision is final and any effort you make to dissuade me shall be met with stern refusal.
That sounded perhaps too draconian. She injected a more convivial conclusion.
I pray Woodbury does not fare too poorly. Yeah.
Bloomington nodded her head and stared like a dumb animal.
Yeah. She fares poorly, I'd say. I am truly sorry. If you can, please relay my message that I will work thrice as hard to make her as comfortable and accommodated as possible. Does she require grief cubes? I am willing to donate some. Nah. She don't need no cubes, don't worry about that. If you insist.
Claire paused and allowed Bloomington to interject with additional questions if so desired, but the girl remained rooted to the wall as though her flesh had ossified. The pause drew to socially unacceptable lengths. As Bloomington showed no signs of talking, Claire decided to salvage the situation by performing the faux pas of speaking twice in a row without comment from the conversational partner.
If there is nothing else to ask, I bid you adieu. I regret to say I am rather busy at the moment and have little time for idle chit-chat. That is not to demean your coming here, of course. But unless you have something else to say.
Bloomington stared. Her lip gave a single, spasmodic twinge. Her snot dribbled down her chin in the most repulsive fashion.
Nah,
she said.
I guess I don't.
Despite the admission, she remained slumped against the wall. Her failure to move even as Claire raised an arm and indicated the door verged on levels of outward defiance. Claire cared little for it. Indubitably, she must no longer rely on such a truculent character. St. Paul and Anoka would prove enough to defeat Sloane Redfern.
Do you need a ride back to your house because of the weather?
Said Claire.
I can call St. Paul to accompany you.
After another lengthy hesitation, Bloomington said,
Nah.
Claire contained herself. She had practiced containing herself from a very young age, because she soon learned that when she failed to contain herself, she did rather nasty things that she later regretted.
Very well.
She strode past Bloomington and opened the door. A cold blast buffeted her, but she maintained her composure using the internal exercises she had concocted to deaden her emotions on the rare moments they surfaced.
I hope to see you soon, Bloomington.
For a terrifying moment it seemed not even this would prompt Bloomington to move, as though she had resolved to become a permanent fixture in the Ibsen household entryway, attached to a wall papered by images of birds mostly from Sparrow Genii. But the frigid cool that swept from the open door galvanized Bloomington to action. Like a golem she broke from the congealed matter that had welded her to the wall, her shoulders stooped and her head tilted, her nose dribbling and her hands twisting into misshapen knots. She turned with arduous care, each degree of revolution detectable as she faced Claire in the doorway. Her eyes were unwavering, despite their puffiness and wet bloat.
Yeah,
said Bloomington. She shambled zombie-like out the door, each step seemingly smaller than the previous.
It is rather inclement outside,
said Claire.
I extend again my offer to have St. Paul escort you home.
Nah, said Bloomington. As though she were incapable of single syllables and had to resort to such truncations, such erosions of the English language, the letters rubbed off by years of misuse among the demotic tongues of the underclass. Claire hated to dwell on such details, but they irked her so much she could not help but notice them.
If you're certain, Bloomington. Goodbye.
Bloomington finally made it out the door far enough for Claire to shut it and seal out the ice that had already started to crystallize between the fabric of her uniform. She glanced out the peephole to ensure Bloomington had not altered her course and watched until her hunched form disappeared into the white blast of snow. Satisfied, Claire straightened her tie, brushed her clothes, and headed to her room to finish the more stimulating conversation of the morning. As she passed the kitchen, her mother said,
"Eggs getting cold."
Believe it or not, it actually took a super long time for Delaney to agree to contract with Cube. Wow, really Delaney? Tell us more about your fascinating indecision. Well okay, it goes like this. After a childhood of abuse at the hands of paternal figures she had so naively trusted, she wasn't quite keen on consigning her soul to another male who promised her a lot more than he seemed able to give. But trust wasn't all of it. In fact, she feared that if she gave Cube what he wanted, the attention he paid her would shrivel and die, like how girls get warned not to fuck guys because then the guys get bored and move to the next swanky chick. By denying them, a girl holds a kind of power, and to a girl like Delaney who had no power whatsoever, such a thought intoxicated. For a long time, actually, she contemplated wishing that Cube would be her friend forever. Holy! Could you even imagine how that wish would play out? Unfortunately, Delaney had darker forces at work inside her and her ultimate wish proved even worse. Delaney? Hello? Why is all this important? Aren't you kinda in a bind right now, Delaney? Shouldn't you be plotting your dashing escape? Analyzing the weaknesses in Claire's makeshift prison, the big one being that her appointed guard, St. Paul, was a total dunce, conniving a plan to swipe your gem from Claire's pocket, etc. etc. Fuck you, if she escaped it just meant she was out in the cold and on the run with no powers, rather than inside in the warm with no powers. Plus she was telling a story, so please shut up and listen. Where was she? Oh yeah. The pre-contract days, when she followed Cube and Claudia around and watched Claudia fight wraiths and hated Claudia's shitty dog, and afterward, when Claudia went home, talked to Cube. Cube knew exactly how to butter her up. He told her she was smarter than most humans, that she had the potential for universe-altering events, that she certainly surpassed the capabilities of Claudia or any other girl for miles and miles. Things that made Delaney feel important, when up until then she felt like worse than trash, a thing, an it. 15-year-old Delaney, trapped in the throes of an embarrassingly late puberty, marred by an isolating albinism, and still barely cognizant of what it meant to be female beyond that it was something inferior to male and also bled like a stuck pig every month. Coming from such a mindset and being lauded by an intergalactic space kitty for your intelligence is no small ego boost. So she talked to Kyubey and asked him questions and learned a lot of things about his species. Like how his species had no females. Not because they were genderless or reproduced asexually, but because their eugenics program had singled females as genetically inferior to males and thus requested their immediate removal from the gene pool. Every single space kitty female had seen the logic in this and allowed themselves to be painlessly and humanely liquidated. Now all members of his species were merely clones of the same perfect genetic agglomerations. Shit like this fascinated Delaney. The hours she spent talking to him about entropy, wow. Science was cool. It always clicked with her and made sense, unlike talking to people or engaging in social situations, a string of numbers and formulas that can be proven through repeated observation. Only later did she apply these same principles to social dynamics. Social science was in some sense a science too. And Kyubey knew so much more about it than the entire human race. Astrophysics and quantum mechanics, nuclear fusion and neuroscience, clones and genomes. Now we fast forward 3 years, where a jaded and deconstructed Delaney moulders in the sterile bedroom of her white-haired doppelganger. Because, when you think about the genetic connection between Delaney and Claire in the context of all that scientific stuff Kyubey once espoused, eugenics, clones, manipulation of DNA, you might realize. Kyubey did not simply find 2 half-sisters who carried the same particular genetic traits he desired. Why would he, when he could build those half-sisters from scratch? And when you think about the traits shared by Delaney and Claire, white hair, red eyes, inability to feel empathy, logical thought processes, extreme intelligence, you have to wonder where did Kyubey get those genes? Because Delaney didn't know too many humans who fit those traits, but she did know a certain intergalactic space kitty who had every single one of them. After all, if his goal was to create predictable pawns predisposed toward certain behaviors necessary for his plan, why bother with capricious and whimsical humans? Why not use the genes and personality traits he knew best? Well, no stopping it now. The roundabout and gradual approach her mind had taken delayed the inevitable epiphany only too long, until it felt less like an epiphany and more like dramatic irony, something everyone but the main actor seems to know until the final act when it crushes her like a Roadrunner cartoon anvil. The actual words a bastard splice between a sloppy sitcom punchline and a Jungian archetype. Kyubey's my father? Cue daytime television talk show audience hurling boos at the irresponsible dad who despite his great wealth never paid a cent in alimony. Delaney slumped her shoulders and tried to laugh but cried instead. St. Paul observed her but said nothing as Delaney's few human genes allowed her to wallow in self-pity and self-disgust. All this time she had considered herself inhuman, a monster, an inherently flawed individual, and to have that assessment so totally and absolutely affirmed splintered the thin spine of worth she had ever scrounged up for herself. Stupid her. She had thought that despite her failings, if she gritted her teeth and just did good deeds out of principle rather than emotion she might gain salvation through the theological concepts that guided the universe. But of course not. How could a mongrel rat alien ever reach salvation? The religion of Earth had no bearing on an extraterrestrial. What goddess could sweep her gaze across Delaney's form and see anything worth saving? Delaney herself no longer thought she deserved it. Everything she did wrong was hardwired into her psyche. Her murder of Claudia, programmed right in. Her destructive, rape-slanted thoughts about Sloane, tied to her very core. Her complete and utter disregard of the feelings of others in favor of her own selfish whims. Notice how the only time she could shed tears, it was for herself, incontrovertible. Her rote self-flagellation was a transparent attempt to curry favor with a goddess who had no right to even look at her.
Hey. 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 Are you okay?
Said St. Paul. Delaney wiped her eyes. Oh God, she couldn't afford to fall into one of her deep sinks of angst at a time like this. Her incubator DNA held one distinct advantage, the ability to turn off her despair like a faucet when she lacked the luxury to revel in it.
I'm fine,
she said.
Sue.
St. Paul focused her eyes and pursed her lips carefully.
Sorry M. Sorry M hurt you. It's okay,
said Delaney.
I'm a bad person. I deserve it. Girls are not bad people,
said St. Paul.
Wraiths are bad people.
Delaney resisted the urge to say I am a wraith, which she would have done more for dramatic aplomb than logic or reason. She had to escape this mean before it ensnared her entirely. She had to remember her goals, saving the universe. Defeating the time demon. Not that achieving those goals would save her. No, shut up, don't say that. Who cares what your DNA is, that's not what you are. You're not a carbon copy of Claire Ibsen, for instance. Some similar traits, but not the same. There are other elements at play here. The pep talk sounded hollow in her head. The mythic concepts she had structured her life around, time demons, Magica, the law of the cycles, entropy, felt like wobbly and inconsequential things. The door opened and Claire Ibsen entered.
My apologies. That distraction took longer than anticipated. Where were we? We established Cube picked us ahead of time for his plans,
said Delaney. She refrained from supplying her revelation about their heritage. Claire was a smart girl, she would figure out on her own.
That we're pawns in a conspiracy to topple demons or some such.
Yes, said Claire.
Fortunately, this so-called conspiracy is reaching its final stages. Once my familiar returns with Sloane's whereabouts, I shall determine the setting for our final confrontation and reap the rewards after her death. Exactly as expected,
said Delaney.
You're not gonna even hesitate now that you've learned Cube popped us out pre-packaged and ready to plug into his plan. Why would I hesitate?
Said Claire.
The demon of Magica must be overthrown, or else the universe dies. The reasoning is unarguable. Besides, I would expect the incubator to put a special care into the selection of his champion. Would he entrust the power to defeat gods to some random girl plucked from this waste? Were I him, I certainly would not. Yeah, and why not tell you this from the beginning? Why keep me a secret? The incubator omits needless words, said Claire. He kept our conversations brief and pregnant with purpose in order to keep suspicion away from himself. Often key articles of information manifested as offhand remarks when I purified my soul gem. Information about Magica, about Homura Akemi, about Omaha, about Sloane Redfern's situation in Fargo, about the Williston Archon, about the girls I should hire to work for me in Minneapolis. Given the complexity of the plot, he had to condense a lot. While initially your power caught me off guard and I wondered at the omission, now that I have you soundly defeated and restrained, I understand he must have calculated my odds of success even with you at Sloane Redfern's side to be rather high.
Through her entire speech, no part of her body moved except her mouth, a paradigm of rigidity and inflexibility exemplified by her perfect posture and confident bearing. She made no missteps of the tongue, timed her breathing so that pauses in her speech felt natural, and at no time looked Delaney in the eye.
In fact, she continued, I understand the tact displayed by the incubator in refraining from bringing you to my attention. Had he done so before I had the chance to meet you, my curiosity would have burned inside me until I found myself incapable of not seeking you out, regardless of his chidings. I thus would have unstitched the delicate configuration of his plan, made blunders or errors, perhaps rerouted all his assessments and predictions. No, better he not tell me, so that no such emotions affect my actions. Since I have learned of our connection only after I met you, I can rest easily in my awareness that you and I have no fundamental differences.
No fundamental differences. Intelligence, logic, cruelty, disdain.
No, said Delaney. There is a fundamental difference. Despite everything, I've tried to rebel against my nature. I've tried to do good in this world. That's why I helped Sloane. I thought I could save her. And the incubator told me by doing that I could save the universe.
Claire moved to her window and stared into the whiteness. She straightened her tie and the lapels of her coat.
I assume the incubator failed to inform you that to save the universe, Sloane Redfern must be sacrificed.
The cold wind whistled outside. The bed springs squeaked as St. Paul adjusted her sitting position.
He said no such thing, said Delaney. I kinda suspected it after what you've told me so far. I will kill Sloane Redfern. It must be me, and none other. Such a betrayal, between two people who knew no love except between each other, a betrayal stretched over the course of 7 months, so that all negative emotions can be drawn to their limit in the festering hell that is this northern fringe between two people of incredible resolve and determination. This betrayal will prove the ultimate sin. The power from this sin will be enough to defeat even gods. I shall harness it and overthrow the demon Homura Akemi. I will then, lacking all further purpose, slay myself and cede dominion of this universe to its most responsible warden, the incubator.
When the incubator had spoken to Delaney, he had said only that Sloane Redfern could unlock the power to overthrow the time demon. How could she have been so idiotic to not press for more information? No, she knew how. It was because at the time she had not cared about Sloane Redfern at all. Why bother with such a question? Ultimately, she had only cared about herself, Delaney Pollock, and doing something good enough to overwrite all previous sins. For her own salvation. Only now, though, did the thought of Sloane's death, in actuality rather than depraved fantasy, only now did this thought strike hollow in the pit of Delaney's stomach. A dull absence of feeling rather than any identifiable emotion.
Furthermore, Claire continued, you are again incorrect when you claim there is a fundamental difference between us. Because I too act against my nature to do an ultimate service for this universe. There is truly no difference between us at all, beyond the ways we speak and dress, and the powers we use in combat.
Delaney searched for a rebuttal, but found none. An immense raven alighted on the windowsill.
Mathis has returned,
said Claire as she undid the latch and opened the window. The temperature plummeted as Claire's papers and books ruffled in the wind. Claire leaned forward and tilted her ear toward the bird. Its beak clicked and clacked as it cocked its head in odd directions, almost turning it completely upside down like an owl. After the brief message, Claire nodded and whispered something. With instant comprehension, the bird spread its wings and took back to the stormy air, its black form sailing straight and unperturbed through the gale. She shut the window and realigned her clothes, must by the elements.
Sloane Redfern has been found.
St. Paul shot up and saluted.
Let me. I win. That won't be necessary, said Claire. She is located at one of Ramsay's safe houses. Assaulting Ramsay's stronghold without a numeric advantage would prove foolhardy and most likely lead to Fargo slipping through our fingers yet again.
Then, said St. Paul,
then what? What?
Claire placed her fingertips together as she turned from the window and faced her lackey.
Then we wait. Sloane knows where I live. If I do not come to her, she will come to me. With Delaney Pollock and her powerful barrier magic subdued.
She spoke as though Delaney were not in the room.
We have no need for a surprise attack like last night. Sloane Redfern can prepare and plan all she wants, but she can never surpass me in that regard. Especially with the advantage of home turf with which I am far more intimately acquainted than her. Oh.
St. Paul strained to speak.
I see.
Stepping over Delaney, Claire moved for her desk. She dragged out the chair and took a seat.
Fetch my phone, St. Paul, she said. It is time to call Anoka.
Chapter 24, A Barber with Parkinson's Disorder. In central Minneapolis, beneath a highway in a dark crevice of concrete pillars, a girl kneeled beside a wad of dry newspaper, lit a match, and set fire to the kindling. The overpass blocked the wind and the paper caught easily until it cast an orange glaze across the tight geometric surface of the overpass support system. After so long in the dark, the light irritated the Terminatrix Sepulveda's sole remaining eye. She squinted and scratched at the eye patch that covered her empty socket, like it felt pain too. Sepulveda's eye adjusted. She retrieved her maps and documents from her rags and flattened them against the sloped floor. A red circle remained where her targets had slept the night prior. Their contracts should have been terminated there, but the invisible girl intervened. Sepulveda's boss failed to mention any invisible girls. That pissed her off, because she knew damn well the fuckface rat shitheel dick fuck did not simply forget or not know about the invisible girl. He knew fucking everything. Like, yo. Sepulveda was no dumbass bimbo bitch. She didn't grow up in no suburban funland. She fucked around with coyotes, both human and canine, and knew a double crossing when she saw it. Shit like that was how she lost her eye, and she ain't got many more eyes to lose, yo. And yet, in the MG business, ain't nobody pays the bills but L Ratfuck. Her gun don't take wraith powers, so if she need cubes she need terminations. Invisigirl fooled her once, but Sepulveda still got Pollock's powers, and they were damn good powers. Once she tracked down Redfern, she already knew where to find Pollock. She had this shit in the bag whether Kyafuck wanted it in the bag or not. Problem though. She had no fucking clue Sloane Redfern's whereabouts. Her eye scoured the maps. We're talking less than 24 hours in Ice Storm Apocalypse. Bitch ain't going far. She pulled her red Sharpie out, uncapped it, and nibbled the back of the pen as she crawled over the map. The poor lighting forced her to shove her eye close to the parchment. She crossed out names of neighborhoods sure to be duds. But the city had like 50,000 fucking neighborhoods, so plink in the bucket.
This a piece of shit, beep boop, she muttered to herself. Shut the fuck up you crazy bitch, said a voice from the dark.
Probably a homeless dude. Or the onset of schizophrenia ha.
Disembowel yourself on a lead pipe,
Sepulveda yelled back. Her voice echoed. Nobody responded.
Fuck you, I'm a robot,
she added for punctuation. Nobody responded again, but she had painted herself crazy enough that unresponse was merited. She returned to her maps when something in her pocket vibrated. With a startled cry, she flipped supine and scurried back crab style as she swatted the pulsing thing against her thigh. What the fuck was this? Alien space parasite? Government implant? Malignant tumor? Her hand shoved into her pocket and retrieved an ordinary cell phone. Oh, that made sense. Except Sepulveda had never owned a cell phone ever in her life, and that in no way should she get service beneath 100 tons of concrete overpass in a raging blizzard. Dem Seppi, you a schizoid for sure. She answered the phone.
What part of my fragmented psyche are you? Is this Ivan Litzando Perez?
The voice was level and collected. Definitely not a piece of Sepulveda's psyche. Its bitter rationality exuded through so few words made Sepulveda uneasy.
No, I'm a robot,
she said. She searched the dim underpass for concealed attackers. Alien spies. The unseen hobo from earlier. Her scalp itched with lice.
Where'd this phone come from? My dolls gave it to you,
said the voice on the other end.
Dolls? The fuck? You have good reason not to trust the incubator, Ivan Litzando Perez. I concur with your suspicion that he intends for you to fail.
Oh shit, the aliens could read minds. Oh shit.
I, however, the voice continued, intend your success. I will make myself brief. Sloane Redfern is at 2542 Ruth Street, Little Canada, Minnesota, zip code 55117. The house is owned by Destin Carmichael, assistant to Chelsea Stoddard.
Chelsea Stoddard. Sepulveda had heard that name before. She flipped through her files. Oh yeah, the Ramsey girl. Sepulveda had files on all the girls in the area just in case, courtesy L Ratfuck. Ramsey was unique in that she had 8 listed addresses. Ruth Street was one of them.
So's this mean Redfern and Stoddard teamed up?
She asked mysterious hot tip girl. The phone went dead. Well then. Sepulveda gathered her maps and files and folded them neatly back into her pockets. Time to do some shit, yo. Ramsey twirled the shotgun like a conductor's baton.
Oh Sloth, how could you be so cruel? Shattering my fragile feelings so.
Sloane folded her arms and betrayed no discomposure at the haphazard use of the gun. The shotgun was not Ramsey's magic weapon. Which meant who gave a shit? Sloane recognized the dull effect of Ramsey's charm, the desperate subconscious pleading to adore her, but its power had either weakened or her resolve strengthened. How to deal with this? Sloane's reflexes were better than Ramsey's. With the right timing she could seize the gun. The other girls were nothing to worry about. Carmichael was nothing to worry about. Hennepin, without her powers, was nothing to worry about. Even if Ramsey eschewed discretion and transformed in front of her followers, Sloane had the advantage. She was already transformed from her practiced session in the backyard. From all angles, Sloane won this fight. That Ramsey considered a fight feasible only signified her disjunct from reality. And yet, Sloane had worse enemies than Ramsey.
You're right,
she muttered.
It was cruel of me.
Ramsey cackled with delight, tilting her head so her screwy pupils could stare from beneath the solid black shield of her sunglasses.
Hear that? She admits her fault. What a rapscallion, what a knave.
She looked at her followers, who looked back. She looked at Sloane. She opened her mouth to add something, but closed it and smirked.
Yeah,
said Sloane.
I admit it.
Girls with fragile egos are influenced by even meager appeasement. Considering Ramsey already seemed ready to acquiesce, Sloane might even save time as opposed to a fight. But she also had tactical reasons for concession. She needed Ramsey's car. She also would like Ramsey to keep Hennepin powerless and maybe provide minor assistance in the fight against Claire. Not like Sloane had better options for allies.
Well,
said Ramsey. She leaned against the shotgun like a cane.
This is boring. Slap each other already,
said Hennepin. The other girls agreed with dull murmurs. Ramsey bit her lip and hesitated while Hennepin led the crowd in a chant of fight fight fight. Ramsey scowled and retook control by raising her gun over her head.
This is what separates me from louts like all of you. You crave such base violence, while I abhor it. People make mistakes, I am willing to forgive if proper penitence is shown. Don't act like I haven't done the same for each and every one of you.
She aimed her gun over the crowd. The girls murmured again. Other than Hennepin, they seemed incapable of clear speech.
You ain't forgive me for shit, said Carmichael. Still blame me for dinging your car 6 weeks ago, sheet.
Ramsay stomped her foot.
Fine. Fine. You want punishment, I'll give her punishment.
She turned to Sloane, teeth gnashing as she brushed back her hair and pointed her gun.
You were a total bitch, after all. Maybe I shouldn't let you off so easy.
Damn it. If she made Sloane search the house for clothes.
Ramsay. Come on. I'm sorry. I got worked up.
Be political. Socialize. Exude charisma and likability for once in your life. There was probably some rather easy combination of words to resolve everything. Ramsay didn't want to fight, but after such self-aggrandizement she had an audience to placate. Sloane figured. Woven within the crowd was one of those dolls from outside. Or maybe a different doll. It had the same big hat and tassels. But nobody had opened the door behind Sloane. She noticed a second doll next to Hennepin, and a third in the shadowed corner of the room. Sloane, muttered Omaha's voice. I don't know what happened, the dolls are missing, there's only one left out here. How did they move so fast and without opening any doors? She turned to the tassel doll, but it was no longer there. Shit, and the one next to Hennepin had moved too. Would they attack with so many people around? No way. Just Omaha had stopped them before.
Hey!
Ramsay, hands on hips, angled into Sloane's line of sight.
Are you even listening to me? I said I wanted your coat.
The doll in the shadows, the redhead, had stayed put. It grinned, eyes twinkling like subterranean diamonds. Ramsay jabbed a finger into Sloane's chest.
Are you daft? You're beginning to royally piss me off.
Kinda busy, said Sloane. Where were the other two? Why wasn't the third moving? If they left the fourth outside to distract Omaha, then... Tassel doll dove from between Ramsay's legs and drove a toy dagger into Sloane's foot. Except instead of a toy dagger it was the most painful dagger of all eternity. Sloane howled in agony, kicked at the doll, and staggered back as the second doll, one of the blonde dolls, leapfrogged over Ramsay's back and sailed at Sloane's face with a little wooden spear. Sloane materialized her gun and pointed at the doll. The doll redirected its root midair and dropped beneath the barrel, plunging its spear into Sloane's gut dangerously close to her soul gem. Sloane slammed her gun on blonde doll's head, but the fast little fucker scampered aside, so all Sloane managed to do was smash her own pelvis with a humiliating grunt. Sloane's gun ended aimed directly at Ramsay's face. With a unified cry, nearly every girl in the room dashed forward and flung themselves in front of Ramsay while Sloane grappled with the tassel doll. In close quarters she could not line up a shot, but she could still bludgeon. The doll raised its dagger for Sloane's gut, but Sloane slammed her gun down and connected with a dissatisfying thunk as the doll sailed like paper into the living shield of girls. With a hoarse snicker it recovered and scurried between their legs and disappeared. Sloane leapt to her feet and scanned the premises for where the dolls had retreated. Neither her foot nor her stomach bled. The weapons had not harmed her, but they hurt like fuck more than a physical blow. It felt like they had stricken her soul gem directly, even though both attacks had missed it. What were these things? What power could cause pain like that, pain that reverberated through her gut and made her knees buckle? Her gem as overpowered as it was, pain should be dampened more than usual. But it was worse than when she had been on the brink of despair back in Fargo.
You dare draw your gun on me?
The girls around Ramsay flew back as Ramsay cast off her Dalmatian fur coat and twirled. She thrust an upturned hand in front of her with her Celadon soul gem atop it. A blinding flash sprung from the gem. When it subsided, all of Ramsay's gaudy accoutrements had vanished, replaced by a sleek green dress that cut low and flowed long, wrapped tight around her slim body by several thick leather belts. In fact, Ramsay wore lots of belts, many for seemingly no reason at all, belts around her arms, her ankles, even her neck. In the buckle of the neck belt sat her transformed soul gem, a perfectly square emerald. Ramsay's goons ogled.
Wow, boss. So cute. I want it. I don't have time for this,
said Sloane. She scoured the area for dolls, but even Redhead in the corner had vanished. Something lashed out and coiled around Sloane's arm. It was a pulsing, barbed whip, tightening like a tourniquet as Ramsay tugged on it. She placed a finger to the edge of her lower lip and cackled.
Tee slow, you're not going anywhere.
She wrenched the whip back and Sloane staggered forward. The barbs dug through her coat and into her skin. An inconvenience at best. Sloane tossed her gun to the side and aimed it at the taut whip. One volley sufficed. The whip shivered and dropped. Ramsay cracked the remains of her whip. It reformed immediately.
Come on Ramsay, said Hennepin. You can't beat her. Nonsense.
Ramsay posed pointlessly.
I mean, sure, I didn't expect a fight. But I have an idea.
With a flick of her free hand, she unraveled a belt from around herself and quickly clamped it around her eyes like a blindfold.
How can you blind that which cannot see?
She swung her whip in Sloane's general direction. Sloane sidestepped. The whip wrapped around one of Ramsay's flunkies, who fell shrieking in pain. Sloane rammed her gun into Ramsay's gut. Ramsay dropped with a dry heave.
Tch, said Hennepin. Told you. You should let me try. I've got powers that'll fuck her up.
Ramsay rolled on the ground clutching her gut, her whip jerking the hapless girl she had ensnared back and forth. Sloane grew uneasy. Ramsay was no threat, but those dolls? Where were they? Ramsay wrenched the belt from around her eyes, hurled it to the ground, and stomped it.
Stupid, stupid, stupid.
Hennepin sighed.
I warned you, which really should not have been necessary because it was so bad an idea even you must have realized it.
She prodded the belt around Ramsay's throat.
Of course, now that I see your uniform for the first time, maybe it's just you're into that whole punishment thing. What?
With a crack of her whip, Ramsay freed the girl she had bound.
I am most definitely not, gross eo. Belts look cool, okay. Don't worry Ramsay, your sadomasochism is safe with me,
Hennepin said, especially loudly. The ground rattled beneath the onslaught of Ramsay's feet and fists. Her words devolved into incomprehensible shrieks, even as her girls and Carmichael swarmed to console her.
Now, Hennepin continued, how's about giving me back my soul gem so I can deal with Fargo for you?
Shut up already, said Sloane. The girls had crowded too tight. The dolls could be anywhere. Sloane needed open ground.
Why did you point your gun at me, Sloey?
Said Ramsay.
I was joking earlier. I wasn't going to hurt you. Can't you understand a joke? I wasn't aiming at you. Can I explain something for a moment? Why? Probably because she hates you.
Duh. Said Hennepin. Sloane disliked Hennepin's contributions to this conversation. She waded through the girls and reached a wall, which she propped her back against as she scanned the area from a more open vantage.
Look, Ramsay. You probably won't believe me, because it sounds really stupid, but right now there are like these creepy invisible dolls trying to kill me, so.
Ramsay curled up and rolled onto her side.
I knew it. She hates me. Everyone hates me. I'm pretty meh about you, said Hennepin.
Something tapped Sloane on the shoulder. She turned to see a wide snaggle-tooth grin close enough to gnaw off her nose. The smile was attached to Redhead Doll, who had phased halfway through the plaster. In the millisecond necessary for Sloane to realize the diversion, something rushed her from the opposite direction. Sloane jumped as it lunged with its toy spear of death. The shaft grazed Sloane's leg while the doll, moving too fast for Sloane to tell which, rolled forward and vanished through the floor. Redhead that had distracted her giggled and sank back into the wall. Hide behind barriers, hey? Sloane had a fix for that. She pushed herself back as a series of daggers plunged through the wall, their tips missing Sloane by centimeters as she wheeled around, planted her foot against the carpet, and launched demolition derby rounds of light into the wall. A mass scream rose through the room as the girls scrambled over each other to get as far from the light as possible. Sloane paid no heed. She had no fucking time for hide and seek.
What are you even doing?
Ramsay screamed.
My house, my house.
Hennepin quipped unheard over the roar of the gun. For good measure, Sloane pumped some salvos into the floor. Through the obliterated remnants of the wall she could see the obliterated remnants of the next room over. A whip lashed out and coiled around Sloane's neck. The cord hung suspended in air before Ramsay brought down her arm and cracked it, cracking Sloane too. The gun flew from her hands as she slammed to the ground. Ramsay pulled back the whip and lashed Sloane's prone form with it over and over. The moment Sloane attempted to rise, the barbs beat her down.
"Oh Ramsay," said Hennepin. "I've been a bad girl too, punish me Tilda."
A furious glint crept into Ramsay's eye as she brought the whip down again and again. Sloane took the brunt while she commanded her gun from afar to discreetly angle in Ramsay's direction. The lashings disrupted her concentration. She lined the shot perfectly. The ground creaked, groaned, and collapsed. Sloane rolled down the suddenly inclined carpet, flopping over the holes she had blasted with her gun, until she slapped against the concrete wall of a basement. She rubbed her head and struggled to rise until Ramsay rolled into her.
"Get off me, get off me, get off me, get off me,"
Ramsay said. Sloane tried to oblige, but it turned out Ramsay was on her, not the other way around. She used her power to make Ramsay weightless and hurled her in a random direction. As she righted herself and staggered to her feet, she searched for an exit. Above her, at the top of the ramp the caved-in floor had created, Hennepin laughed and the girls who had not yet fled stared in horror and confusion. Carmichael, behind the rest, stuck out his arms and caught Ramsay as she sailed past. Around Sloane, on the small patch of bare concrete that hadn't been collapsed upon by the ceiling, the three dolls danced in a circle. When the hell did they get there? Sloane called for her gun to aim for the dolls, but if she missed she would roast herself. The dolls danced, waving their spears as they clicked shiny black shoes against the ground in rhythmic patterns. As though on a wavelength Sloane could only sort of pick up, she heard tiny voices speak an incomprehensible language, guttural and vaguely Germanic. They were singing, chanting, the same three words, over and over. Above, the door to the backyard flew open. Omaha lumbered in, shrouded in her purple aura. Under her good arm she held the struggling fourth doll, the second blonde. Its smile had flipped into a crescent moon frown, although its eyes remained unchanged. Its arms and legs shook with jerky puppet motions. Omaha huffed for air, took stock of the room, and pointed at the dolls that encircled Sloane. "You're all very bad children." The dolls stopped dancing and their mouths dropped in dismay. They began to twitter and tremble with violent, epileptic motions. Sloane decided not to stay to see if they would explode, or wait for Omaha to explain what the fuck was happening. She punted Tassel Hat Doll into the stratosphere, sprinted up the incline back to the ground floor, and seized her gun off the ground as she charged the glut of Ramsay's girls. The girls screamed and scattered, leaving only Carmichael to stand in Sloane's way, Ramsay cradled in his arms. Sloane decided to swipe his legs out from under him with her gun, but realized at the last moment he was no magical girl and her gun would put him in a wheelchair for life. Her momentum had carried her too far, however. She hit the ground at a slide, kicking Carmichael's shins with her boots instead. His enormous figure hit the ground behind her. Sloane cartwheeled to her feet and sprinted down the corridor. A few wayward girls flattened against the wall to flee her warpath. As she rounded the kitchen she wondered where the fuck she was running and what her short-term goals were. "Sorry Sloane," said Omaha's voice, "they caught onto me pretty quick. They're back on your tail. Be careful." She glanced over her shoulder but saw nothing in pursuit. "Where do I go?" she thought back. A response that assuaged all fears. She paused in the kitchen, unsure how to find the exit. A mischievous quartet of giggles resounded down the hall. A pair of white ellipses darted into a shadow. Sloane positioned herself in the center of the kitchen and aimed her gun down the hall. Time for more demolition.
"Looks like you're in a jam."
She turned toward the voice. In a previously unseen alcove leaned Lynette.
"Kinda busy," said Sloane. "I recommend you leave."
She hoisted her gun for emphasis. Lynette shrugged.
"Or I could show you the way out if you want."
Sloane's eyes scanned the hall. No sign of the dolls. She didn't like it.
"I'm in a hurry. Move fast."
Rather than move fast, Lynette opened a door beside her. Sloane followed into the dark room beyond. Only when she crossed the threshold did she think Lynette might lead her into a trap. But Lynette flicked a light switch and illuminated the garage. The pink Cadillac from before sat beside two other fancy cars, also pink, with models Sloane did not recognize, because Sloane gave zero shits about cars. Their squeaky coats glimmered under the light. Out of her modest jacket Lynette fished a jangly set of keys which she span around an outstretched finger as she led Sloane past the Cadillac and a sad, unused convertible to a car with the word Corvette on the rear.
"Let's drive," said Lynette.
She clicked a key and the Corvette flashed its lights with a digital chime.
"You know how?"
Lynette opened the driver's side.
"Think Chelsea keeps me around for my good looks?"
Sloane watched for dolls among the tires and in the exposed rafters.
"Will it even drive in the snow?"
At the press of a button, the passenger door opened.
"Of course. Chelsea enchants all her cars. Mostly so they don't get scratched but also for other fun things."
Enchants? So Lynette knew about magic. Sloane disliked that, disliked the idea of Claire's sister being a relevant entity whatsoever, much as she would dislike Mr. and Mrs. Ibsen's involvement, or even Sloane's own family. But she had too few options and had backed herself into a corner by following Lynette into the garage. Either she went through the big door or ran straight back to the dolls. But maybe.
"You slow or something? Get in."
"Fine." Sloane dragged herself into the Corvette. She accidentally banged her gun against the door and had to despawn it since it didn't fit inside. Sure enough, she left no dent or chink in the hot pink coat. The place she struck fizzled with pixie dust.
"Buckle up, kid, it's gonna be a bumpy ride."
Lynette keyed the ignition and started the engine. She pressed a button on the dash and the garage door opened with labored and mechanical progress.
"Where are we going?"
said Sloane.
"Where else? Home sweet home."
Sloane scratched her seatbelt.
"Did Claire tell you to bring me to her?" "I'm not stupid. Or deaf. I heard what you said to Chelsea in the bedroom earlier. And she's told me her intentions plenty times before. You're gonna kill Claire, aren't you?"
The garage door finally opened onto a white road in a white world. At the same moment, the door to the house flew open and Ramsay stormed in with Carmichael and Hennepin and a dozen others.
Hey! Hey! That's my car!"
Lynette slammed the gas. The car rocketed out the garage, bounced down the driveway, hit the street already attempting to turn, span out, and skidded into the front yard on the opposite end of the road.
"Aw shit!"
Lynette dragged the stick transmission all over the place while simultaneously spinning the wheel back and forth. Unamused, Sloane watched Ramsay and her crew file one by one into the Cadillac, filling it like a clown car. Finally something on the transmission locked into place and the car jerked backward onto the road. It wheeled around and accelerated at full tilt as the Cadillac roared after them. Lynette adjusted the rearview mirror and reached beneath her seat, only to retrieve a fresh bottle of vodka which she snapped open and swigged. Sloane regretted entering this vehicle.
"Don't drink that!"
Lynette dropped the bottle. It rolled beneath her feet.
"It's water. You think my liver's made of iron? I fill them with water to keep up with Chelsea. Her liver really is made of iron, or something."
The car took a hairpin turn down a residential street but avoided another spin out. The streets were devoid of life, save submerged vehicular husks that had rolled onto the sidewalk or into ditches and been abandoned in the night.
"Yeah, that's what happens when your body regenerates," said Sloane. "What do you know about magic?"
They whipped around another corner.
"Not as much as I'd like. Chelsea says she's supposed to keep mum about it, but she's bad at keeping mum. So I hear snatches. I know she's one. I know you're one. I figure my sister's one too, since I met Chelsea through her and I don't know any other reason those two would associate ever."
She spoke as though this were no fantastic revelation, but rather an inconsequential addendum to her life. Sloane checked if Ramsay's Cadillac had kept up. It had, but the more important thing was the three dolls seated on the trunk of the Corvette. Their legs dangled over the edge as they tilted their heads and giggled in Sloane's direction. The laws of physics seemed not to apply to them.
"Look. Point is, you're gonna kill Claire. I know you're gonna. I knew the first moment I saw you, and what you said to Chelsea confirmed it. I could see in the way you changed. You used to be at least somewhat normal, but now."
Sloane undid her seatbelt.
"Excuse me. We have some invisible dolls on the back of our car."
Lynette shrugged.
"I'll believe it."
The space inside the Corvette was too small for her gun. Sloane opened the door. Wind tried to force it closed, but Sloane leaned out and propped her body against it. The scenery whirred past in an undying strip of white interspersed with random flashes of color. Sloane grabbed the roof of the car and stepped on the rest in the door. The dolls cackled and cackled and cackled as she made geriatric motions to scale the side of the speeding Corvette. A more nimble magical girl would simply backflip out the door and onto the roof. Sloane's coat flapped in the wind. One of the dolls hurled its spear like a javelin. Sloane threw herself against the door and swung into the open air to avoid the bolt. She wrapped her hands around the handle. The hinges groaned as a blast of wind jerked the door back and slammed Sloane against the frame. Still she held, her feet dangling inches from the snow-drenched asphalt, her ride weaving through aimless curved roads. The other dolls raised their spears to throw. Climbing slow and steady was not working. But Sloane was acclimating to the speed of the wind and the sleekness of the car, all its fluid sides and lines. She felt more ready to try some bullshit. She let go of the door and flew back. She summoned her gun and swung it in midair, smashing blonde doll just as its spear left its little hand. The doll sailed off the car with a squeal of dismay while Sloane seized the spoiler with her free hand. The rest of her body kept flying into oblivion, but the tether of her arm rooted her to the vehicle with a hard bout of whiplash. Immediately Tassel Doll plunged a dagger into her hand. The pain was unimaginable, like a torment of hell, despite the lack of any stigmatic wound sprouting in her palm. She clenched her hand tighter as she reeled herself in, plunking a boot down in the hollowed rear light. If she let go of her gun she could reorient it in air and erase the other two dolls, but she would also erase the car and Lynette and other stuff, too. These dolls were eerily good at getting into situations where she had little ability to shoot them. Also her hand hurt so bad Jesus fuck. Tassel Doll tore the dagger out and stabbed again. And tore it out and stabbed. And tore it out and stabbed. Sloane screamed and clung and tried to latch onto the back of the Corvette. She got both feet stuck to something when the redhead doll leapfrogged over the first and grabbed hold of Sloane's head. It scuttled head first down Sloane's body, not stabbing, but crawling for her stomach, the location of her soul gem. By the time Sloane realized what was happening, the doll had already reached it. Its razor claws tore at her coat. The buttons came undone and her soul gem hung exposed. Sloane withdrew her grip from the car. She flew into open air. The Corvette zoomed away as she seized the doll latched to her torso and ripped it off while it clawed and bit. They twisted in air, bounced against the ground, flew up and into the windshield of the Cadillac. Tinted glass caved beneath her and shattered. Sloane sailed into a nest of screaming girls. Tires screeched as snow and hail mingled with leather and flesh. Sloane span and whirled as needle teeth sank into her shoulder. Something big and dull jabbed deep against her ribs. Her skull cracked against a thing. All sense of direction went poof. The next thing to register with any clarity was the wretched face of the doll as it spread its shark jaws wide and went for Sloane's eyes. She grasped its scrawny neck and throttled hard while bodies writhed beneath her and the car span out of control. She wrenched the doll from her flesh and hurled it out the shattered windshield. It bounced off the hood and flew into the white. Sloane slapped her gem to ensure it remained intact, an action she realized was pointless. She turned her dazed head and observed her surroundings, girls atop girls, limbs and heads, Carmichael in the driver's seat making frantic motions to regain control. A weak hand pattered against Sloane's skull. The hand was attached to Ramsay, most of whom had been flattened beneath her.
"How can you be so cruel, Slow?"
she said, her voice on the verge of tears.
"Why are you so mean to me?"
Sloane made sure none of the dolls had slipped into the Cadillac. At least 10 girls were crammed inside. They veered near a discarded snowplow as Carmichael righted their course. The Corvette had not escaped too far ahead.
"Can you look at me when I'm talking to you?"
said Ramsay. Although she considered not doing it, Sloane looked at Ramsay. Ramsay aimed her shotgun at Sloane's exposed soul gem. She maneuvered her slender arms in the awkward space so the butt of the gun clattered against the passenger window. Arms wrapped around Sloane from behind. Hennepin's face surfaced out the girl heap and said, "Hi."
"Should I slow down?"
said Carmichael. In the melee his beret was lost. Snow swirled through the shattered windshield. Ramsay angled her head in his general direction.
"Stay on Lynette's ass."
She returned to Sloane.
"Now, you. You're going nowhere, snoo.
A minor force would break Sloane from Hennepin's grip, but the action took the time to pull a trigger on a shotgun. If the dolls showed up, she had no other choice.
"Do you know what I did for you?"
Tears streamed down her face.
"Do you? Because you seem pretty fucking ungrateful. I saved you from Claire, neutralize Hennepin, hide you from the 9 million things that want you dead, and what do you do? What do you do, Sloane? You insult me, slap me, humiliate me, damage my property, hurt my friends, and in general bite your thumb at me for no explicable reason.
Her hands trembled across the shotgun. The belts around her arms and neck stiffened. A trickle of blood ran down the side of her face.
I thought we were friends, Sloane. I really thought that.
What had Sloane ever done to impress that she and Ramsay were friends? Sloane barely remembered talking to her before Fargo. The adrenaline pulsing in her veins howled for violence, howled for Sloane to wrench the gun away and pummel this pernicious obnoxious blot to dust, and then turn and pummel Hennepin too, splatter their brains across the sickly enameled leather seats and all the silly girls roped into Ramsay's tri-county drug mafia. All of them had only ever gotten in her way. Ramsay, Hennepin, Omaha, Delaney, either willful incompetence or scurrilous riddles about time demons and vapid bullshit that meant nothing, nothing at all, because the only thing that meant anything was Claire Ibsen and the demolition of her soul. Just kill them, her inner voice whispered. Just kill them all. If they impede her progress they might as well be Claire's pawns. Destroy her tools. Bash them to smithereens. Do it. You have fast reflexes, Ramsay has slow. Take the gun. Take it. Sloane's hands curled into hooks. Why did everyone keep confronting her with opportunities to kill them, flinging their worthless bodies in her way as if beckoning for death? The light in her soul gem simmered inside her. Be creative, they had said. Because they knew she was not, and that her attempts to become so would fail. All she had to do, she saw it now, was overwhelm them with such raw power they bent beneath her will. How creative can you be when faced with a nuclear weapon?
Hurry and shoot her,
said Hennepin. Ramsay's hands tightened around the gun. Try to pull the trigger, Ramsay. Try it. One reflexive twitch of your finger and your arm leaves its socket. The gun lowered. Ramsay's head lowered.
I can't, she said. She's my friend.
What? Said Hennepin.
What?
Said Sloane.
Before you left. The first time, I mean. When Claire kept telling me I should leave the city. I had nothing, no money or anything. I remember it. I needed your permission to extend into Anoka's territory since back then the old Anoka was basically already dead. I showed up at your house and asked you. You smiled at me and...
She sniffled.
And, you took my hand and told me I could do anything I wanted. Like you thought I was strong. Like you thought I was better than just some stupid kid whore. And you were so strong and cool, too, everyone knew how strong you were. It made me feel... like...
Her voice diminished. The other girls and Carmichael said nothing, made no indication they even heard, lost in their own world where Ramsay was a likable and infallible demigoddess and not something shriveled and unstable. Despite the howling wind, a quiet descended on the Cadillac. The heated blood chilled in Sloane's veins. She had never said those things. She remembered little of Ramsay, but knew no such meeting ever happened. In those days Sloane spent as little time at home as possible. And if she encountered Ramsay at home, she never would have spoken so kindly, let alone to a girl lobbying for bureaucratic loopholes to poach territory. But Sloane had a twin sister, after all. A twin sister who comprised all the qualities Sloane herself lacked: compassion, caring, generosity. Aspects magnified by the miracle that had given back her sight. A twin sister who would see a small and battered girl raving about Anoka and territory and would feel empathy for such a thing. Would say a kind word, would offer hot cocoa. Sloane deflated. She sagged against Hennepin, felt as though her blood had emptied through slit wrists.
I'm sorry, Ramsay. I was thinking of ending it, said Ramsay. My gem was in bad shape, I really needed the extra territory, I was burning through cubes so fast. And then you said that, and told me I could have the territory if I wanted, and everything from there turned around for me. Even when Claire kicked you out, I felt like you were still watching over me? Like a guardian angel. It gave me the confidence.
Such a small kindness. But to a desperate girl, even one small kindness can create a fixation, an obsession can save a life. Sloane had not even been the one to give that small kindness. And had by some unlucky accident Ramsay found the real Sloane Redfern 7 months ago, and asked for more territory and a little sympathy, Sloane had no doubt she would have crushed that girl's soul in as few words as possible.
Ramsay! Look! I.
What could she say? That it wasn't her?
I. Hey, who that in the Porsche?
Said Carmichael. Sloane and Ramsay and Hennepin looked out the driver's side window. Zooming alongside the Cadillac was the third car Sloane had seen in Ramsay's garage, the pink convertible. In the driver's seat, peering through the tinted window and directly at Sloane from behind an iron mask that bore Delaney Pollock's visage, was the Terminatrix. Chapter 25, This entrance was meant solely for you. The cars rattled through snow that had the consistency of ash. Powdery puffs billowed around them and masked the air in phantasmic haze. Even the sheer pink of the convertible's hull drifted in and out of visibility. More valuable was the whir of its engine and the electric crackle that lingered around the Terminatrix's mask. Sloane licked blood from her lip and rolled off Hennepin. She knelt behind Carmichael's driver's seat and observed over his shoulder.
Who is that?
Ramsay asked.
Terminatrix, said Sloane. Her gun steals the powers of the girl it shoots. She already has barrier and healing magic. Better hope she don't shoot me, said Hennepin.
Despite the 10 people crammed inside, the Cadillac had enough space for Sloane to summon her gun. She propped it against the cup holders with the barrel sticking between the two front seats.
Beep boop.
The voice pierced the wind and motor whir like a speakerphone.
Pull over the car. You are under arrest. Pull over the car. You are under arrest. Pull over the car. Oh shit, what kinda undercover ass cop is that,
said Carmichael.
I ain't going to fucking jail, yo. She's no cop,
said Ramsay.
She's one of my kind. Let me and Sloane handle.
The convertible emerged out of the haze and smashed into their side. Sloane's head cracked against the side of Ramsay's seat and Ramsay's head cracked against the glass. The other girls screamed. Ramsay rubbed her head.
Damn. Carmichael, you and the others need to jump ship. This isn't a fight for you guys.
No, said Sloane.
The only reason she hasn't royally wrecked our shit already is because she won't hurt normals. We get rid of them and she drops a barrier right in front of our car, boom. This is your final warning. Pull over the car or your goods are forfeit. We owe. Then what do we do?
Ramsay asked. Blood ran down her hair like a red highlight in a wave of platinum blonde.
Surprise her,
said Sloane. She leapt out the shattered windshield, bounced off the hood, and dove the gap onto the convertible. Her gun span as she aimed for the driver's seat, only to find nobody sat there and a small red bubble held down the accelerator. The unmanned wheel made a lazy revolution as the convertible leaned to the side and aimed for the curb. Sloane dropped her gun and grabbed the wheel. The car righted while the Terminatrix popped out from the back seat with her silver revolver drawn and aimed at Sloane's back. Sloane commanded her charged gun to blast the Terminatrix in the gut. Light fired instantaneously and the Terminatrix formed a bubble around herself. The light ricocheted into the sky. Sloane abandoned the steering wheel and let the car go where it pleased at nearly 100 miles an hour down an icy road. She jump-kicked the bubble, bounced back, and flipped onto the hood. Creativity, creativity, she needed a way to get past Delaney's bubbles. She remembered the stupid image she had made of herself in the backyard. Even if it only distracted for a second. From the Cadillac, Ramsay lashed her whip. It coiled around the Terminatrix's bubble as the belt-bound girl leapt from the Cadillac and into the convertible. Sloane had to hastily cut off her gunfire to stop it from frying Ramsay in the face.
I got her,
Ramsay said.
Now how do we break this bubble?
The bubble burst. The whip constricted around the next solid thing it could find, the Terminatrix's torso. Elation lit up Ramsay's face and she pumped her fist. From the Cadillac, her adoring fans cheered. Despite the whip coiled around her, the Terminatrix calmly turned her gun and shot Ramsay in the face. Ramsay clapped her hands to her eyes but no wound appeared. Ramsay, you fucking idiot. The situation had gone from bad to worse really quickly. Sloane had not surprised the Terminatrix at all and the convertible veered toward the edge of the road. With a running start, Sloane bounded back to the Cadillac. Her boots hit the slick paint and she slipped onto her ass, but she made the jump just before the convertible struck the curb and went airborne. The girls inside the Cadillac made a collective gasp as the Porsche corkscrewed into an oblivion of snow, followed by a series of progressively louder metallic screeching and smashing noises. A whip lashed from the ether and coiled around Sloane's leg. Sloane swung her hands out and latched around the windshield frame moments before the whip yanked her off the hood. Shards of glass dug into her arms as her body stretched its full length along the side of Cadillac. She glanced behind, the Terminatrix bounced along the road, Ramsay under her arm. Sloane corrected the whip issue by summoning a new gun and having it sever the whip with one quick shot, which caused Sloane's lower half to drop against the road and drag through the snow. The snow at least buffered her so she didn't sand off the flesh on her ankles. "I can't use my powers," said Ramsay's voice. "I fucking warned you," said Sloane. "I just wanted to help." Sloane jammed a foot into the door handle and propped herself up as she tried to climb back into the car. Another whip lashed her in the back, but the pain was nothing compared to an attack by those dolls. She bit her lip and pulled herself in, rolling into the vacant passenger seat.
"This is why I don't jump between moving vehicles," said Hennepin.
"Where's the boss?" said Carmichael.
"Where's she go?"
Something landed on the roof of the car and dented it inward. Sloane angled her gun straight up and fired. Holes tore through the roof until the roof peeled back like a sardine can. Out of the ashen air sailed a body. Sloane halted her fire just in time as Ramsay thudded into the swarm of screaming girls. The next moment, the Terminatrix landed on both feet, stiletto heels digging into someone's hand. Sloane lifted her gun but hesitated.
"Raise your gun, I shoot,"
she had to yell above the wind.
"You shoot, I bubble. And then every normal in this car gets fried," said Sloane. "I told you before, I don't give a shit what I have to destroy. I won't let you stop me from reaching Claire."
The face on the Terminatrix's mask had changed from Delaney to Ramsay. The Terminatrix shifted her stance to stop impaling somebody's hand. She rolled the revolver around her finger, rubbing the barrel with her other hand. As the barrel turned, so turned her mask, from Ramsay to Delaney and back again.
"Well now. I would never want to harm my adoring fans, beep boop."
With dramatic aplomb, she struck a pose. A bit of digital glimmer ran down her body like a sparkly flare. The girls, cowering against the sides of Cadillac or between the luxurious seats, poked up their heads.
"Wow. So cool. She's like hot Daft Punk."
For a moment, Sloane had no idea what Ramsay's goons were saying. But as their praise grew more unanimous, one voice chiming against the wind, Sloane realized, the Terminatrix stole Ramsay's likability magic as well.
"Beep boop. My adoring fans. I am so happy to have you, because normally everyone hates me. For my first command, I demand you restrain that fair maiden escaping out the window."
She pointed at Hennepin, who had half her body out and looked prepared to fling herself into the street, even if it meant an immediate coma as her soul gem sped away with Carmichael. She cast a frantic glance back at the Terminatrix and froze as though caught red-handed, which was just enough time for 3 or 4 girls to grab various parts of Hennepin and yank her back into the car.
"I never liked this bitch anyway,"
one of the girls said as they pinned Hennepin down.
Hey.
Hennepin did not struggle against them.
"Hey, I'm not involved in this. I'm neutral."
Sloane fixed an eye on the Terminatrix. She kept swapping between the Delaney and Ramsay masks, maneuvering her gun with practiced finesse until it seemed almost like both masks were on at once, Delaney's face phasing through Ramsay's. If the Terminatrix could only use the power of the mask she currently had active.
"Thank you for your cooperation, beep boop."
By switching between the two masks so fast, she could keep the goons' pliable zombies to her will, while also remaining prepared for Sloane's attack.
"Your powers will be taken temporarily in pursuit of justice and the law and other things robots like me are programmed to uphold. Once the criminal scum have been eradicated, your powers will be returned." "Let's not do this."
Hennepin's voice wavered.
"I don't like this."
Sloane waited for the Terminatrix. Watched her masks cycle. Calibrated the timing.
"Just have these girls go after Fargo, yeah? That's the simpler option, right?" "Right. I cannot send normal human beings to fight a depraved murderer,"
said the Terminatrix. She seemed hesitant, as though aware Sloane had caught onto her.
"Your powers will be useful. This discussion is over."
The revolver barrel clicked and the mask switched to Delaney's face. A bubble sprouted before Sloane, flattening several other girls beneath it or shunting them to the walls of the car. Sloane dove over the barrel as the Terminatrix flicked the barrel to an empty chamber, her face swapping back to the generic wraith-like visage from their first encounter. Sloane squeezed over the bubble and came down on the Terminatrix hard and fast. Her boot slammed against the hand holding the revolver. A metal and inhuman grunt of pain issued from the dull open mouth in the Terminatrix's mask as her hand opened and the revolver flew out. Without pause, Sloane pivoted in the cramped space and swung her fist at the mask. Her knuckle struck the cold hard metal and she reared back with a shriek as a dull reverberation of pain shot through her nerves. She stepped on a body and lost her balance and fell on her ass atop some other bodies. The Terminatrix bounced against the door. Her head snapped back and smashed the window to glitter. She rebounded, her mask twitching and flickering with static, her arms jerking back and forth. Sloane scanned the cushions of the seats for the revolver but it did not catch her eye. Instead, she noticed the Corvette racing alongside them, Lynette with her vodka bottle in one hand and the other clutched to the steering wheel. On the roof of the Corvette sat the one doll Sloane had not managed to deal with, the tassel doll. It waved at Sloane with its immutable smile. Before Sloane could react, the Terminatrix fell upon her and levied a swift karate chop to Sloane's throat. Sloane clutched her neck, rasping for breath as an uppercut nailed her in the chin. The Terminatrix forced her onto the writhing mass of bodies and aimed a hooked set of fingers at Sloane's soul gem. A gun clicked and the Terminatrix froze. She slowly looked behind her. Ramsay stood there, the silver revolver raised.
"I did it,"
she said.
"I got her now. I did it."
The Terminatrix tilted her head, shrugged, and swept out a kick that knocked Ramsay off her feet. She reached out and snatched the gun from Ramsay's hand while she fell. If Sloane had nothing better to do, she would have slapped her forehead in shame at Ramsay's antics. But she had a split-second window while the Terminatrix's head was turned, so she used it by shoving her hands against the Terminatrix's neck and squeezing. The Terminatrix tried to pivot her arm and aim at Sloane, but her hand struck the headrest of a chair and stopped her for the moment Sloane needed to heave with all her strength. The Terminatrix lifted off of her, into the air, her body suddenly weightless from Sloane's magic. Up and up she went, sailing airborne, out the open roof of the Cadillac, into the snowy heights. Her limbs flailed as though swimming, but nothing could redirect her ascent, unbound by gravity's pull. Eventually, as the gray sky obscured her, she gave up trying to redirect herself and aimed her revolver down at Sloane. But Sloane anticipated this action and grabbed the closest piece of worthless material to block the shot, Ramsay. Ramsay squirmed, so small without her inflated Dalmatian cloak, but as the shot rang out and she yipped in fear nothing actually happened, her powers had already been stolen. The Terminatrix gave up on firing from a distance. A red bubble encased her and stopped her from untethering completely from the planet. Sloane pushed off Ramsay and sat up. The Corvette still drove alongside them, but the doll had disappeared from its roof. Fuck. Sloane scanned the waist of girls and picked out Hennepin as she attempted to burrow herself beneath the seats. Sloane wrapped an arm around her torso and yanked her from her hiding spot, at the same time imbuing her with the same weight-reducing magic she had used on the Terminatrix. By about this time the magic had worn off on the Terminatrix, at least according to Sloane's internal timer. Sure enough, the bubble popped and the Terminatrix dropped. But Sloane already had a running start, hauling Hennepin under her arm as she leapt out the Cadillac and landed atop the Corvette. Hennepin wrapped her arms around Sloane. Her fingers dug into the coat.
"What the fuck are you doing?"
she screamed.
"Getting on the faster car."
And also getting them away from a group of mindless normals the Terminatrix could sway with Ramsay's magic, and the ineptitude of Ramsay herself, and if Sloane guessed correctly the tassel doll, who had probably slipped into the Cadillac undetected. But that took too long to say. With one agile motion, she scurried down the opposite side of the Corvette, no more hesitation, she had her car parkour down pat, pulled open the door, and hurled Hennepin into the passenger seat.
"Step on it!"
she hollered at Lynette.
"Get us away from their car. I'll stop anyone from following."
Lynette gave a thumbs up and stomped the gas. The Corvette spurted ahead, quickly whipping around a hairpin corner. The scenery that flashed past had shifted from suburban sameness to the larger towers of the inner city. Once they came out the other side, they would be close to Eden Prairie and Claire's house. And Sloane's own house. Now was not the time to think about that. She slammed the door shut as she scurried onto the roof of the Corvette. The Cadillac already lagged behind them. Eyes peered through the window, faces pressed to the scattered remnants of glass. On the hood knelt the tassel doll, no longer waving, her arms folded in a sulky pout, her smile somewhat straightened as the distance between the cars became impassable. Sloane lifted a hand and flipped the doll off. Unless the dolls could fly, that meant they were out of her hair for the time being. She scanned the Cadillac for the other things she had to watch out for, but the snow and the tinted glass soon rendered everything invisible save the pink sheen of its coat. Ramsay, talk to me. Where's the Terminatrix? If I go too far away from my gem I'm gonna die, you know? The response puzzled her until she realized it was Hennepin. Shut up. I brought you along so you wouldn't get your powers jacked. Ramsay, where are you? Ramsay's voice finally spoke up. Hey Sloane. I'm here. I know I messed up, but I'll help any way I can. We gotta beat Claire, right? I can't let my personal quibbles get in the way. Where's the Terminatrix? Sloane said. Please don't be mad at me, but she's not in the car. I don't know where she is. Oh, and, tell Lynette to slow down, okay? Carmichael can't keep up. Only the dim circles of headlights remained of the Cadillac as it slid down the wispy gullet of the city. Sloane knelt atop the Corvette, holding onto the slick surface with sheer magical willpower as she surveyed the road and the towers around her. She disliked not knowing the Terminatrix's location. Sloane? Are you there? You need to slow down. Ramsay, tell Carmichael to stop. Stop your car. Stop following. What? The voice weakened, either from the distance or the howl of wind or the dwindle of Ramsay's self-esteem. You want me to stay here? That's exactly what I want. You're no good without your powers, Ramsay. I'll handle Claire myself, and the Terminatrix too. I don't need you. The Cadillac disappeared completely. Oh, said Ramsay. Are you doing it? Are you stopping? If you want to help me, stop your car. Yeah, I'll tell Carmichael to stop right now. You're right. Good. This was going along swimmingly, with minimal fuss. Sloane had little patience for long, drawn-out pleading. Don't worry about me, she said. I can beat Claire. I know I can. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. Sloane let the conversation die. All immediate danger had cleared and it was too damn cold on the roof with the wind and sleet pounding her. With a fluid motion she swung down the side of the car, opened the passenger door, and hooked herself inside. She shuffled Hennepin's temporary corpse to the side, enough for Sloane to sit, and sealed out the ice with a slam. The howl subsided into a muted muffle and despite sharing her seat with a dead girl, Sloane found time for her heart to calm and her blood to slow.
Dem girl, said Lynette. That was some stunt you pulled. Jumping between cars. People can't do that shit. Becoming a magical girl magnifies the capabilities of your body, said Sloane.
Her eyes followed the arc of the windshield wipers as they fought against the elements outside.
Magical girl? That's the name for it. I didn't make it up.
Too bad the Corvette had no backseat. Hennepin's limp head sagged against Sloane's shoulder, a bony plate of forehead boring into the gaunt flesh. The girl weighed a lot more than Sloane expected, and was only slightly less obstinate dead than alive.
Well, let's talk serious for a moment, said Lynette. You're gonna kill Claire, right? Yes.
Lynette stared ahead. She turned the wheel while phantom street signs lit up beneath her headlights.
I'll help.
Great. More functionally worthless and potentially distracting people who wanted to help Sloane.
You're helping enough by driving. A normal person stands no chance against magic. She'll tear you to pieces in an instant. I know.
A smile parted on Lynette's lips.
She knows it too. Which means she won't consider me a threat. If she's preoccupied fighting you, I can sneak up behind her. That won't work. There's only one way to kill a magical girl. You have to destroy their soul gem. You mean like that thing on your stomach?
Sloane looked down. In the ruckus her coat had come unbuttoned, revealing her true magical girl attire beneath. The bearskin and skimpy accoutrements glistened with frost. When Lynette gave Sloane a sly wink, Sloane seized the sides of her coat and furiously fitted the buttons back together.
Yeah, like that, said Sloane. That's the only place she's weak. But destroy it and she's dead instantly. So I go for her stomach. No, that's just mine, said Sloane. Hers is.
Sloane searched her memory, drew a mental picture of Claire in her Greco-Roman regalia, the long folds of toga, the golden sandals and bare arms. A look that suited her so poorly, exemplified her slight frame and brought out her red eyes as the only splotch of color in her entire ensemble. In this mental image, Sloane quickly located Claire's gem, right shoulder, a dull ruby set within a clasp that pinned the strap of her gown. Wait, was that it? That was where Delaney kept her gem. Sloane wasn't getting confused, was she? No, Sloane remembered clear enough. Claire's gem was also on the shoulder. In either case, she made no effort to hide it. But now that Sloane remembered Delaney, she wondered if Claire might borrow one of Delaney's tricks and swap her gem with a fake. It was such an obvious ploy, every girl ought to do it. Although Sloane guessed not too many girls could afford real precious stones to use as decoy.
It's on her shoulder, said Sloane. You'll find it. So you're down with the plan?
Said Lynette. Maybe. It made sense and gave Sloane a strategic ace. Lynette's voice maintained a casual apathy, but in her eye gleamed something more, almost a frenzy of color Sloane rarely saw. She too was a girl whose entire life had been carefully deconstructed by Claire's all-consuming presence. And while Sloane had suffered defeat in a calculated moment of betrayal, Lynette had lived an entire life under Claire's thumb. Sloane had misgivings that another Ramsay might transpire, but Lynette exuded a cool competence Ramsay lacked. A desperate determination Sloane recognized as a mirror image of herself. Sloane, no. Sloane looked around. The road stretched behind and the road stretched ahead. The car turned. Snow and mist everywhere. Hennepin's dead body and room for nobody else. Who's there? Sloane, don't rely on her to fight for you. Have faith in yourself, okay? The voice was unmistakable. Omaha? Where the hell are you? That's not important. What's important is you beat Claire yourself. That's what's important to you, right? Sloane looked under her seat for any traces of blood. There was nowhere Omaha could possibly be. Unless the trunk, or clinging to the roof. How had Omaha wound up in either of those places? Had she hitched along in Ramsay's Cadillac?
It doesn't matter what you say, said Lynette. I'm gonna try anyway. You might as well use me like a tool I am. Ha ha ha.
Whatever. Lynette's idea had potential, but Sloane doubted it would work in practice. A normal had half the speed, reflexes, and general combat acumen than even a garbage-tier magical girl, and while Claire's raw power was mediocre, it was more than enough to dispatch Lynette in a fraction of a second. Actually, Claire's music instantly incapacitated any human who heard it, much like a wraith miasma, turning them into brainless shambling zombies. No way would the plan work. No need to tell Lynette, though, who still sat in the driver's seat.
How close are we?
Sloane asked. Lynette adjusted the rearview mirror, although their backward visibility was basically void.
Close. When we get there, you gonna shoot shit up. That's the idea. You worried about your parents? Fuck my parents, said Lynette. Fuck Eden Prairie. Fuck Minneapolis. Fuck Minnesota. Who decided to build a city here? What was their fucking impetus? How many Norwegian fucks decided their own damn country wasn't cold enough so they had to inhabit the ice shelf of North America? A race of idiots browbeaten by the snow until their craniums folded inward to inhibit their mental processes. There's that stereotype about Minnesotans, oh they're so nice, oh they say sorry, but really you know what it is? They've all been fucking lobotomized. The ice numbed their frontal lobes and transmogrified them into grinning imbeciles. A few more years and I'll be the same.
They swerved around a bend. Around them fluttered strings of multicolored fairies weaving in and out of the mist. Christmas lights. They were dim closed now. Gone was the land of coke and hookers, come was the land of Yuletide cheer. Of woolen sweaters and cookie trays, of fuming chimneys and wood stoves burning. Sloane's hand curled around the armrest. The Terminatrix and the Gossamer dolls were behind her. Who knew how long until they caught up, but that was all the better, it gave her an incentive not to waste time. She had one objective now, and one only. Claire Ibsen. Are you ready, Sloane? Said Omaha's voice. Yes. If you want to win, don't mess around with anyone else she might throw at you. Go straight for her. I know. I believe in you. You can do it. Sloane did not respond. Her heart palpitated with the useless blood that chilled her veins. The car rounded a corner and slid to an abrupt halt despite the ice. Great floodlights penetrated skyward from the snow to illuminate a tall iron gate and the sign beside it. Eden Estates. Lynette put the car in park but left the engine running. She gathered her coat around herself and opened the door. Her boots crunched against the ice as she wandered through the mist to the gate's password input system. Sloane drummed her fingers against the glove box. Lynette lingered in front of the control pad, mashing keys with trembling fingers. Sloane drummed faster. Cold air sluiced through the open door. Her white breath was sucked out the vacuum. Lynette pushed the final key. The gate uttered a low and ominous groan as it fought against the snow piled against it. Inch by inch, its iron bars parted and began to open. Sloane drummed faster. A sudden thought struck her. She should make sure Hennepin was out of sight. If the Terminatrix caught up, it would be like leaving her a free power-up. While the gate continued at its monumental pace, Sloane hit the lever to disengage the trunk, opened her door, and slung Hennepin over her shoulder. Her boots hit the snow and crunched. She shielded her face with a hand and the bulk of Hennepin's body and rounded the car for the trunk. Omaha sat curled in the trunk. She waved at Sloane with her sloppy wrist. Wrapped in her other arm was the fourth doll. Hi. I hope you don't mind. I snuck in here a while ago. To keep at least one of these dolls out of your way. She won't do anything as long as I hold her. She won't hurt me. Sloane dropped Hennepin on top of Omaha and slammed the trunk shut. She looked up. Lynette stood by the control pad as the gates continued to open.
Bah!
Lynette shouted. Her voice almost drowned beneath the wind.
This is taking forever, let's walk.
Two things happened at once, in such rapid succession they almost seemed choreographed. First, from between the gates leapt a hooded figure encircled by a ring of shiny silver discs. The figure St. Paul landed near Lynette and decked her in the face. Lynette dropped cold. The second thing that happened, while Lynette plowed into the snow, was a gunshot. Sloane staggered back as a dull, painless, but significant force impacted her foot. She stared at her boot, but saw no hole or wound. St. Paul stood by Lynette's body, consternation on her face as though she only now realized it was not Sloane she punched. From under the Corvette, with lithe and snaky motions of her limber body, the Terminatrix emerged. Sloane boggled at the fact the Terminatrix had managed to fit beneath such a tight space, especially since she surely must have been there while the car was moving. But then she noticed the smoking revolver in the Terminatrix's hand and forgot everything else. Oh no. Oh no, this wasn't happening. Sloane summoned her gun, and a wave of relief surged through her as it appeared as commanded, long and heavy in her hands. The barrel span as she aimed at the encroaching Terminatrix, swiftly building momentum until it reached the necessary velocity to fire. But it didn't fire. It just span and span and span, worthless. The Terminatrix clicked her revolver. Her mask shifted from Delaney's face to Sloane's own face. Same squinted eyes, mouth hung agape in moderate idiocy.
Beep boop. I am a professional robot, did you know? My entire life revolves around hunting down whimsical little bitches like you and making them pay for their sins. I'll grant you have an above-average luck stat, or at least the universe seems to be conspiring to keep you alive for whatever reason. But I ain't about luck. I'm about ruining your fucking day.
Oh no, said Omaha. Sloane, did she? Oh no, let me out of here Sloane, I can help. To open the trunk, Sloane needed to pull the lever beside the front seat of the car. But that was currently low tier on Sloane's list of priorities, because the Terminatrix's hands started to glow with a dazzling golden sheen. Sloane knew this attack. It was her own dem attack, after all. She tucked her head low, closing her eyes was not enough, since her light could fry corneas through eyelid skin, and charged the Terminatrix. She still had her gun, which meant bereft of all else she could smash a bitch to bloody pulp. The light flared. Even with her face nearly pressed against her chest she sensed it, her eyes crinkling as, sightless, a field of red replaced the black. She swung her arm and the gun and connected to a ribcage. The Terminatrix grunted and slammed against the Corvette. Sloane lifted her head and opened her eyes, the light in the Terminatrix's hands dying. She raised her gun to bring down on the mirror image mask. The Terminatrix shot out a leg and caught Sloane in the stomach. Sloane sailed backward, bounced against the snow, and rolled into an inflatable Santa Claus. Sunspots crept across her disoriented vision as she flipped to her feet. Two bright circles emerged out the snowy haze as two entwining rivers of light surged toward her. She scanned for somewhere to jump, nowhere but snow, when the light streams struck an odd ripple in the air and bounced into another realm. Sloane rubbed her eyes and better saw the silver disc studded in the snow that had reflected the Terminatrix's attack. A second ripple sliced through the air. Sloane jumped as the disc sailed through where her waist had been moments ago, now only whooshing under the curled toes in her boots. She hit the ground and darted to the side, unsure of the terrain but sure she lacked the luxury of immobility her overwhelming offensive power tended to afford. She soon ran into the gate, almost striking it but redirecting her path as it sprung into sight before her, following it back toward the Corvette and the entrance to Eden Estates. She could not simply evade the Terminatrix now. She had to get her powers back before she fought Claire. Sloane? Sloane? Are you okay? Please talk to me, I'm worried. Stop distracting me. Sloane found the Corvette, but both the Terminatrix and St. Paul had gone somewhere. Only Lynette's unconscious form, already half buried in falling snow. Half stooped, she skidded for the driver's seat. Someone had closed the door, or else the door had always been closed. She fumbled for the handle, her hand slipped, her feet slipped. She wound up on her ass, rubbing the back of her head. She reached again but retracted as another disc skipped over the Corvette's hood and bounced just over her skull, severing a few strands of wet and clumped hair. Fuck, Sloane didn't even know where St. Paul was, or the Terminatrix. The snow made sight such a mess, and sight was supposedly her forte. Shuffling aside snow, Sloane crept under the Corvette. The space beneath was actually rather open, the carriage had been lifted to accommodate oversized and flashy tires, probably with spinning chrome rims or some other tacky embellishment. A thought that only made Sloane angry for having it because it was so stupid, but now she couldn't get stupid spinning rims out of her mind, so somehow Ramsey had managed to transmit her uselessness across time and space and distract Sloane without even being there. Fucking great, fuck everything, fuck. She got almost entirely under the car when her arm jerked back. Her gun was stuck outside, unable to fit beneath. Okay, she would put it away for. Something grabbed the gun and pulled. Sloane flew out from under the car, her body suddenly weightless. She sailed into the air and was yanked back by the Terminatrix. The air swirled around her as she slapped against the snow, relinquished her gun, and bounced into a drift.
Nice gun, bitch.
Sloane sat up. The Terminatrix held the machine gun in both hands, lifting it with some exertion to inspect the length of its barrel and the shine of its metal. In an instant Sloane was on her feet and running as the Terminatrix aimed and revved up. Vietnam levels of gunfire crashed against the landscape behind her, forcing momentous chunks of snow skyward. Sloane struggled through the ice to maintain her speed, legs and arms plowing wildly as the Terminatrix loosed a loud and metallic laugh, the same curt syllable looped in tune to the rat-a-tat of the gun, ha 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 ha. From the corner of Sloane's periphery sailed a lacquered mirror. She jumped again. St. Paul, she realized, preferred to aim low, as the disc sailed under her. A silver edge clipped the spray of light and reflected it in a random direction before whirling into oblivion. St. Paul sprinted along the top of the black iron gate, keeping pace with Sloane. She pointed her finger and 3 more discs detached from the ring around her to fly in Sloane's direction. Oh God! Sloane thought she might actually have an idea. Light nipping her heels, she jumped again but not straight up. She leapt at the discs, hitting the smooth top of the first and bounding over the next 2. She flipped through the air as she angled her body directly through the eye of the ring of discs, to where St. Paul's cloaked body stood undefended. After a brief delay, St. Paul's face recognized the danger. St. Paul crossed her arms and the ring of discs closed in front of her, creating a solid and impenetrable shield. Sloane's reflection in the discs replaced St. Paul. Sloane's momentum had carried her too far to redirect. She hit the discs and bounced back into the snow. All according to plan. The Terminatrix's aim had followed Sloane's every movement. She raised her gun in tandem with Sloane's leap. Now, as Sloane dropped on her back in the snow, the spray of light passed over her and hit the reverberating discs. The light, ignoring the laws of physics and instead obeying pretend land St. Paul laws of perfect reflection, sailed back toward the Terminatrix. Sloane stared upside down as the light closed in. Surprise, she thought. The Terminatrix dropped the gun and span the barrel of her revolver. Sloane's face switched to Delaney's face. Instants before the light struck her, a red bubble ballooned around the Terminatrix. The light hit it and bounced back the way it came. All according to plan. The light hit the discs. It bounced back and hit the bubble. It bounced back and hit the discs. An endless cycle of reflection and ricochet, the light gaining velocity, becoming almost a solid yellow bar between the barriers of both girls. The silver discs glowed orange, the bubble pulsed with pressure. Sloane had always posited her light's power could break any barrier given enough sustained fire. The problem was that barriers tended to send light back the way it came. But now. Cracks spread across the discs. The bubble squeezed smaller and smaller. Sloane tilted her head back in the snow and laughed. And laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. What is it, Sloane? What's going on? St. Paul's discs shattered in a spray of shards. The Terminatrix's bubble burst in a deluge of blood. Light shot out in both directions. St. Paul and the Terminatrix flew back as it pounded both of them. St. Paul dropped onto the other side of the fence, the Terminatrix dropped back in the snow. The light dissipated with a flash and sparkle. Neither girl stirred on the ground. Sloane pulled herself up and staggered for the Terminatrix. Her helmet had flown off and rolled far away. Beneath it lay a surprisingly human head, no circuitry or wires, a head of long black hair tied into a compact bun. Sloane dropped on top of the girl and pinned her down. She wrapped a hand around the throat and angled the face to stare at her. The Terminatrix had but one eye. In the other socket was her soul gem, a hunk of pure onyx. Sloane hooked her fingers into a claw and dug them in, latching the tips around the precious stone. The Terminatrix moaned, her legs scuffled. One forceful tug and the onyx popped out, slick with a gelatinous substance. Sloane clasped the gem in her hand and patted the Terminatrix on the cheek.
Give me my powers back.
The Terminatrix blinked. A lazy eye rolled, glassy and dull itself.
Give me my powers back.
The eye snapped open. It peered up at Sloane. The Terminatrix coughed.
No,
she said. Her voice was shrill without voice modification. Sloane held the soul gem where the Terminatrix could see it.
Give me my powers back. You are a dangerous girl, Sloane Redfern. Did I ask for moral admonishment? No, I asked for my powers back. Give them to me.
She glanced over her shoulder. St. Paul remained motionless.
Do you know why Cube pays us so much to terminate girls like you, Redfern?
The Terminatrix continued.
The things you do have more consequences than you even know. Demons, right?
Said Sloane.
I've heard that one before. Give me my powers back. I know no demons,
said the Terminatrix.
No demons but you. I can see in your eyes. You don't even care. You'll burn this whole city if you have to. You'll burn this whole world. I can see it. I can see it, ha 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 ha.
Her laugh ended abruptly as she spat into Sloane's eye. Sloane reared back and the Terminatrix rose, hands groping for Sloane's stomach. Sloane tightened her fist. Like a thing of paper, the gem inside her grasp cracked. The Terminatrix's eye went wide. Her hands and body hung half-raised, and then dropped into the snow. Her costume, the sleek black bodysuit, disappeared. The mask, fallen some ways away, disappeared also. Instead, ragged scraps of patchwork cloth flapped in the wind against the Terminatrix's body. Sloane opened her fist. Black dust trickled out and spiraled into the storm. Some black specks remained in her palm. Had she expected to crush it completely? Did she have that much power? When she tried to break Omaha's gem in Williston, she had failed. But her own gem was much more powerful now. She was much more powerful now. She much more wanted to kill now. She stood up, her legs shaky, her stomach stricken by a dull pang. She backed away from the corpse. This isn't the first time you've killed someone, idiot. It was self-defense this time, too. You would have had to kill her eventually if you wanted your powers back. Stay focused. She was just doing her job. She never should have taken such a stupid job. Sloane turned away. Her powers were back. They had to be back. She summoned her gun and fired it into the sky. Okay, her powers were back. Then Ramsey's powers were back, too. And Delaney's. Sloane? Sloane, what's happening? Please, tell me. I'm scared. I'm fine. Stay put. You're safer in there. Sloane wiped her hand on her coat. She walked past Lynette's prone form and through the open gate into Eden Estates. She walked to the dark lump of St. Paul in the snow. St. Paul was full unconscious. She had transformed back into her regular attire, a rather plain sweatpants sweatshirt combination. In her upturned palm sat her undamaged soul gem in its egg form. No need to kill this one, Sloane. Pocket the gem, it'll render her harmless. Sloane knelt, picked up the gem, and placed it in her pocket. She had to kill the Terminatrix to get her powers back. That was the only reason. If the Terminatrix had not stolen her powers, Sloane would not have killed her. That wasn't an excuse. That wasn't to say it was the Terminatrix's fault she got killed. Sloane killed her. But that was the fucking reality out here, okay? The Terminatrix would have killed her all the same. She was just a fucking robot. Programmed by Cube. Get it out of your head, dipshit. Think about Claire. Focus. Sloane wandered down the road into Eden Estates. The suburban houses twinkled, warm and cozy inside. Families beside Christmas trees, families eating dinner around a table. Fireplaces, scented candles. Milk and cookies. Ramsey no longer in the fight. Hennepin no longer in the fight. St. Paul no longer in the fight. Omaha no longer in the fight. The Terminatrix no longer in the fight. That left Bloomington, Woodbury, Anoka. And Claire herself. If she dallied, the dolls would catch up. Better, then, not to dally. Houses passed. Sloane still remembered which one was Claire's. All the way at the end of the community. It loomed into view, the Ibsen household. The mailbox read the surname. Sloane maintained her steady tread up the driveway. She kept her eyes open in the blizzard for goons waiting in ambush. A face stood at the edge of the haze. Sloane stopped and aimed toward it and the face melted back, away from view. Sloane couldn't be sure, but she thought it was Bloomington's face. Bloomington was the lowest concern on her list. Better not to chase her into the snow. If she wants to fight, Sloane will deal with her then. She stepped under the awning above the Ibsen front door. The snow ceased its patter on her back and she shook flakes from her shoulders. Light filtered through the peephole and under the door. Sloane placed her hand on the knob. It turned. The door opened. Sloane entered.